1.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to our Planning and Development Committee for Tuesday, September 7th. We have an agenda tonight. So on that agenda, first item is the attendance. And
I'm kind of getting set up here into a Zoom meeting for this Paris.
Okay, and I'm not sure that is. Attendance wise, Adam, are we all present or is there anyone missing? I don't see everybody.
I am just letting Councillor Ferrier in right now.
Okay.
So you are all present.
Okay, perfect. Then that takes us to second item, approval of the agenda. Before we ask for approval, is there anybody that would like to add anything to tonight's agenda? Okay, I don't see any hands. I will point out that there was a request for a deferral on item 9.4, and I want to bring it up tonight simply because that is the very last item on tonight's agenda. So I don't want, if we do defer it, I don't want the people waiting around tonight, or we can hear it. So I'll leave it up to the committee. If there's a motion from the floor, I'll entertain it. Councillor Wheat.
I'll move to defer item 9.4. Seeking a seconder.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Coleman. Okay. No discussion on that. I will ask the clerk if, Adam, did we get a timeline from the applicant on this when they were going to bring it forward again?
I will defer, I believe. Well, there's Matt, so I believe Matt can speak to that.
Yeah, because I don't want to defer and then nobody knows what's going on. And do they have to go through the planning process again? Sorry, we got to give notice again.
Yeah, so through the chair, we have just been asked that the application be deferred for now with no time to come back to council. However, if the application does change in any way, for instance, if they require a closer distance than what has been proposed before committee tonight, then we would be coming back for another meeting, and we would have to amend the application and do a whole new public circulation on it as well.
Okay. That sounds fair. Okay. I know we usually don't have discussion for deferrals, but I'll ask if there's any questions of clarity on the deferral motion, which I had. Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor to defer that last item.
We have a question. Can I ask one question for clarification, please? Because I asked to be a delegation for that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, well, I'll allow it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to understand what that means, the deferral, and if there are no changes, we wouldn't be notified of any opportunity to come forward and speak.
Okay, and that's why I asked at the beginning. For it to come forward, we still have to send out the notices of the meeting. Is that correct, Matt? I just wanted to be clear on that. Yeah.
Yep,
so yeah, correct. you would be notified. Yeah. Okay.
It's being deferred. And when it comes with no decision, obviously tonight. So when it comes back up, we will be notified of the meeting just as we were.
Yes.
And is there any information on the reason for the deferral for this?
There's reasons, but I'm not quite clear on it. It was a late email, but maybe Matt, if you could follow up with.
Yeah, through the chair, the applicant is looking at potentially changing the boundaries of the proposed lots, which if they did that, it would affect the distance, the relief that they're seeking for from the NDS calculation.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we voted on the deferral. Nobody had anything else that I seen to add to the agenda. So I'll call a motion for it to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that'll take us then to declaration of pecuniary interest. I would ask that you do so at the appropriate time. We'll go down to item 5, adoption of minutes from the previous meeting, and it seemed like a while ago, but our last meeting was July 6th. So can I get a mover to adopt those previous minutes from July 6th? Councillor Pierce, Councillor Bell. Any questions, concerns, omissions, anybody seen on any of those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the vote to approve. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, any business arising from those minutes? Okay, seeing none, this will bring us down to item 7, and this is public hearings under section 11 of the County of Brant telecommunication tower protocol. And there's 2 towers that we're going to be looking at. And who's the planner on for tonight? Oh, Kayla. Kayla, but just before you begin, I do want to say that these are ExploreNet towers, and I thought at one time they were part of the SWIFT thing. They are not, so I'm not in a conflict there, perceived or otherwise. But I also want to, can you just clarify before we get into them, Kayla, what we're doing tonight? Like we're not the deciding body. What are we doing tonight?
Sure, thank you, Councillor Miller. So that's correct. We have 2 tower applications before us this evening, and the towers are federally regulated. So Industry Canada is the approval authority for all communication towers. And there is a process that the applicants need to go through. And one of those sort of steps in the process is to consult with the municipality, host a public information session, and then council would sort of provide support perhaps for an application, or they may not support the application, but council does not have the final say in the process. So that's correct. We are here tonight just for information, and then these applications will come back at a later date for a formal recommendation by planning staff.
Okay, and that's what I kind of need to hear. So we're just hearing it like we would any other application. We're just hearing it for information tonight, and you will, okay, fair enough. All right, correct. So, okay, I appreciate getting that cleared up. Now, did you want to present first, and then we'll go to the applicant? So
yeah, no problem. I will just share my screen and do a quick presentation. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, we're good, Kayla.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, council and members of the public. The purpose of this information presentation is to provide the committee and members of the public information from the applicant and the agent in regards to details of a proposed telecommunication tower at 64 Brant Road. And Industry Canada does have the final say in regards to tower proposals. ExploreNet is proposing a 45-meter self-supported light-duty tower, as you can see on the map in front of you. The lands are designated and zoned agricultural, and no public input has been received on this application. Staff are continuing to receive comments from internal and external agencies. And an information session has been scheduled for October 6th. And following that session, staff will return to council with the recommendation report on the merits of the proposal. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and any questions for Kayla from the committee at this time? Okay, see none. Kayla, just okay, we'll go to Councillor Gatward, then I'll ask my question of clarification. Go ahead, Joan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kayla, on page 31 of the report, the last Google Earth map, there's Brant Road, which this is on. What is the other road there? I'm just trying to orientate myself on Brant Road.
Sure. I believe that this is an area that is referred to as Osborne Corners. So perhaps that might help you locate the area. So the property does have frontage on Brant Road.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Kayla? Okay, see now just a question of clarification, Kayla. You said October 6th was the public hearing. How do we get more details about that? I'm guessing that it would be electronic.
Yes, so the agent has just recently reached out to staff with that date, and we will provide a Friday file memo to council to provide all the details, but it will be a virtual meeting, and that's put on by the agent for the proposal.
Okay, thank you. And I will ask the agent if they would like to speak to this planning matter. Are they here tonight?
Good evening. My name is Cyrus Gassabay. I'm with Ford and here on behalf of ExploreNet. I don't have anything additional to add, but I'm here if there are any specific questions anyone might have.
Okay, any questions for the agent of ExploreNet? Okay, seeing none. I'd love to talk to you about ExploreNet, but we're not here tonight to talk about ExploreNet. We're here to talk about the tower. So, okay, seeing none. I tell you what, we'll as part of a public meeting, we will open this up to the public and see if there's anyone from the public that's here tonight that wishes to speak to this application. So, I'll go to our clerk, Adam, and ask if there's anyone from the public that is here tonight to speak to this.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there's no one here to speak to this particular application.
Okay, but I will ask a second time if there's anyone that wishes to speak to this particular application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public. I'll bring it back to the committee and I'll ask the committee how they would like to deal with this this planning application. I get a motion to receive for information. Councillor Bell, second by Councillor Wheat. Any discussions before we call the vote? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay. That's carried. Okay, so Cyrus, I think you heard as well as I did. So what's going to happen? This goes back to planning staff. I guess they will continue to work with you. And then at some point, we expect to see this application. It may change, it may not, but to come forward at a later date with either, whether we approve it, whether the council approves it, and then that goes in with your application. So this will bring us to the second item, 7.2, and this is again, it's a ExploreNet for 21 Oxbow Road. So Kayla, do you want to present this one as well?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
And you are good.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to another presentation on a tower application. So this is a information presentation as well to provide the committee with information regarding a proposed communication tower at 21 Oxbow Road. The proposal is to include a 45-meter self-support light-duty telecommunication tower on the location that you see here. Now, these lands are designated and zoned agricultural, but I should note that we have received a comment from our environmental planner that this location does not meet our 3 times the height setback from a natural heritage feature in this location. And I also wanted to point out that several neighbors have presented concerns regarding this tower in the specific location here. We did receive a petition with about 15 signatures on it. And I should also point out that a public information session was held in early August. Now, county staff, planning staff were not made aware of this meeting. And at the meeting, I understand that as a result of some of the discussion with the neighbors, the tower site has actually been altered. And so the map that you see here on your screen now shows the original spot and then a proposed setback further. So this will reflect the proposal moving forward at this time. Now, what staff would suggest is because we were not made aware of this public information session, and that's part of our protocol, we would ask that we would continue to work with the agent to host another public information session and continue to listen to the public feedback on this proposal. In terms of next steps, it will follow the same sort of process. We will be back with a recommendation and council will sort of provide their input on the application. And again, Industry Canada does have the final say. So that's it for this presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, appreciate that, Kayla. Any questions for Kayla at this time? Councilor Gatward, what do you quick first, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Kayla. Kayla, I didn't quite catch what you said at the beginning about the environmental planner. And does the proposed new location now meet their requirements or not?
Thank you, through the chair. So no, it does not. The protocol does suggest that a tower should be 3 times the height from a natural heritage feature. So at this time, that's a suggestion in the protocol and not something that is currently being met in the location.
So it's a suggestion, but not a mandatory requirement?
Through the chair, yes. So it will be a comment that will be received as part of the process, and then council will, decide how they want to factor that into their recommendation.
So when you're saying heritage feature, are you talking about the height of the trees?
So 3 times the height of the tower is what the distance should be from any natural heritage feature.
So are you talking about, when you say natural heritage feature, the height of the trees? Because there's some huge, tall spruce trees in that area.
Sorry, I was referring to the height of the tower. So if a tower were, for instance, to ever come down, that it would not fall within a natural heritage feature such as the woodlot. Hopefully that answers the question.
Well, sort of, but
It has to be 135 meters away from the natural heritage site, 3 times the length of the height of the tower. So.
Oh, okay. Now that, all right. Thank you, Chair Miller. Now I get it.
Any other questions, children, before we move on? Okay. Any other questions from any other committee members? Okay, seeing none. Cyrus, again, if you want to speak to this, this is your application.
Sure. This one we might have a bit more to talk about. So we on this site there was notices that were sent out to the adjoining properties, and we did have a virtual meeting. There were a number of concerns raised about this location, and generally the individuals who weren't particularly happy with this location did provide an alternate location. It's a different property entirely. It is owned by the same property owner. We had a look at the alternate location, and it has some other issues that we thought it's really we're gonna create other issues for other people by going to a different property. So what we have suggested is to push the site deeper into the property by an additional 100 meters. Initially, the site was set in about 45 meters from the road, and where we're currently proposing it'd be about 140 meters in from the road. And our hope is that would alleviate some of the concerns that were raised. As far as the natural heritage feature and the 3 times tower height, our understanding is that's a suggestion. It would be a first to have a tower set back from a tree line by 3 times its height, because someone's concerned that a tower might fall in the bush. These things are engineered; they don't fall. And really moving it away from the tree line, anywhere you go in this area would end up with a tower in the middle of an agricultural field, which didn't really seem to make a great deal of sense. So I'm guessing when those guidelines were set out, no one really contemplated a communication internet site that's really the footprint on these is about 2 meters by 2 meters at the tower base. So very, very limited groundworks, very limited disturbance. And once all is said and done and the site is up, almost no traffic to the site other than routine maintenance once or twice a year. Typically, we don't build in big roads or maintain roads to the site just because how sporadic the access after construction is. The guys are typically happy to pull over somewhere and walk in. And if there's a lot of snow, we'll give them some snowshoes.
Okay, appreciate that. Is that it, Cyrus?
And that's all I have. And I think there's a few people that might speak to this tonight.
Yeah, okay. No, I appreciate that. Okay, I'll ask the committee members. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, Councillor Gower, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick one. Cyrus, can you tell me how far will this tower have the capacity to serve in the surrounding areas?
Yeah, that's I'm going to give you a bit of a roundabout answer because there isn't a straight answer to this. So in theory, if we build a site on flat ground, we can service a customer 15 kilometers away. But as we have more and more customers, that range narrows down. And in this case, we actually have sites almost in every direction, as close as the closest one is about 6 kilometers to the south and west. So this site is doing is it's adding additional coverage in the area, but it's also increasing the capacity of that coverage. So what that means is when there are a lot of users on the system, and now with everything that we're doing online, video calls, it increases the capacity so that when you log in, you actually get a good connection that's not slow or buffering. When we're done with this site, and we're also upgrading the sites around, at a minimum, the connection speed will be we call it a 1050, so 50 megabits per second download and 10 megabits per second upload. That's not a shared connection. That's what each customer will get at a minimum. Just looking just a little bit into the future, those speeds will increase to at least 100 meg down and maybe a bit more. Part of this site and everything ExploreNet's doing in rural communities, aside from trying to get the service there, we're trying to get the service upgrade to the speeds people are really demanding now. So part of that is we're connecting our sites to our own fiber backbone. So once we have fiber at this site or the adjoining sites, that also allows us for future capacity in the system and more reliability.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any more questions for the applicant? Mayor David Bailey, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was there a reason why staff wasn't invited or informed of your first meetings?
No, I don't think there was a specific reason. I think it's typically we just go about our business, and maybe they should have been invited in this case, but I put it as an oversight more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think moving forward, it'd be nice if we could have someone from the county when you meet with the public.
Yeah.
It would make me feel better. So, thank you.
I can't. I agree. I agree that would be good, and I can't tell you how many jurisdictions would don't want to be involved. So it's a bit of a toss up, I guess, and we should have asked the question initially. Didn't.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, next time.
Okay. And they'll be invited to the October 6th one as well.
Yeah,
any
absolutely.
other questions from the committee? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so at this point, I will open it up to the public, and I'll go to our clerk and ask Adam, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Yes, hi, Chair, Mr. Chair. Rob Nechtel, hope I said your last name correctly, has registered, and then obviously if anyone else is
Yep.
here and wishes to speak.
Okay. All right, Rob, yeah, you're off of mute, so go ahead anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor David. And Adam, you did mention my name properly, so that's fine. I'm a resident of the Oxbow, have lived here for over 45 years. And I would just like to speak to the Oxbow for a moment because that plays into a lot of the opinions about this tower. The Oxbow is a very unique landmass. It is surrounded by the river. I think it's the largest Oxbow in the province of Ontario. It creates a very unique community, and it creates also a very unique habitat. All the landowners of the Oxbow have very similar attitudes about protecting and preserving the lands. There's very limited hunting allowed. It's a unrecognized but sort of quietly maintained ecosystem that we all take a lot of pride in. And when the first notices of this tower came out, I, of course, went to some of my neighbors and began a dialogue with them. I wanted to see what the opinions were. Because if there's one other thing that we all have in common, it is that we all have very bad internet out here. There's very few of us that have even passable internet. It's just the reality of living here. So none of us are anti-internet by any stretch. But when I was talking to the neighbors, I was quite surprised at the consistent agreement that the Oxbow is not the place for a tower, that because of its self-contained identity, which is probably not recognized beyond the perimeters of the Oxbow, but certainly amongst the families that live here. We certainly put a lot of value in that. And it seems abhorrent, maybe a very strong word, but it just does not seem right to start putting cell towers up on the Oxbow. We had some discussion and we looked at alternatives to this. And we pointed to the field directly across from where Oxbow enters onto the Cockshut Road. There's a roughly a 40-acre field there that, as was mentioned, is owned by the same landowner who obviously has entered into or is planning on entering into a commercial relationship with ExploreNet, and we don't want to compromise that in any way, but we have suggested this alternative location that actually has a slightly higher elevation and does not have the 6 or 7 residences directly in line of its feed. It's off to the side. And we did make this recommendation to ExploreNet in the public meeting that we had. I'm a little bit surprised with Cyrus's suggestion that there are issues there or that there are other people that would be impacted because there's no houses in front of it like there is in the current location. There are alongside, but those people, like I said, everybody agreed that that would be the preferable location. ExploreNet in that last meeting did surprisingly offer to push this tower back. At the time they said 130 feet, now they're saying 100 feet into this bush. And I pointed out that the alternative location that we presented to them would have slightly extra increased costs because hydro would have to be run in. The current location, not the proposed location that they're now suggesting 100 feet back, but the current location has hydro directly to that spot. It's a little bit of a low-hanging fruit choice by ExploreNet. The costs, they agreed that the cost to push the tower back 100 or 130 feet into the bush would be roughly equivalent to what it would be to put the tower in the other location. So I had gone around to all the neighbors and created a petition. We worded it thusly. We said that we're not against the tower. We all have bad internet. We recognize the need for the internet, and we recognize that this decision certainly impacts more than just the residents of the Oxbow. But I was able to get signatures from everybody on the Oxbow, the roughly 13 families that live here, with the exception of one. And although he initially indicated that he was prepared to sign the petition, he thought about it, and he has a son living at home who's studying to be a doctor, and he has a daughter living at home who is working from home, and he needs better internet himself, and he did not want to jeopardize that position, and therefore changed his mind and for those reasons. The issue is that all of us will be passing by this tower every single time we leave home and come back to it again. The Oxbow is a dead-end road. It is not a county road that sees traffic going and coming hither and thro. It is a dead-end road that will mean that the tower is there in our face constantly. We cannot escape it. It will always be there. It's at the opened end of the Oxbow. It's not at the closed end. And it just simply will have to be passed every single time one of us want to move away from our homes. So we are strongly petitioning the Xplornet people and Forbes Brothers to give serious consideration to this other location. We see only an upside to it. We do not see any downside. And we hope that they can agree with us.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob. Now I know you submitted some written comments. In the planner will take your comments into consideration too the next time we see the report on this matter. So no, I appreciate good insight, and I'm grateful you come out. Thank you. I'll go to our clerk now and ask Adam, is there anyone else you're aware of here tonight to speak to this application?
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there's no one else registered to speak to this application.
Okay, but I will ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And seeing and hearing none, I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Okay, seeing none, I will close this part of the meeting off to the public. And Councillor Pierce, I'll go to you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious if we could get a response from Cyrus in regards to what Mr. Neckel was saying in regards to what the issues were with the proposed location that they were suggesting there, because Cyrus didn't really elaborate on what the issues would be. And I'm just pulling it up on Google Maps here myself. It does not appear that there are any houses there. So I'm looking for a response from that if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at this point, what we'd like to do is we take the questions. I was going to do that anyways, Councillor Pierce, because yourself, I take the anybody from the public have questions, we'll direct them to the applicant. So we'll do that now. So Cyrus, do you have an answer for that? Like the
sure.
The alternative location?
Sure. If I backtrack just on one point of clarification. So at the original spot, the distance back from the road the numbers weren't in feet. So it's going to be, it was initially about 45 meters set back from the road, and where we're currently proposing would be approximately 145 meters in the road. So that's quite a long way, back there. And really, if the objection is seeing it while driving by, I think it'd be, something that's 150 meters. That's I haven't worked in feet in a while, but 400 feet or so off the road. It's tucked in quite well. As far as, and that's that's going to be our preferred location. It's our property owner's. He would prefer it where we started, near the road, but our property owner's willing to work with us to push it back deeper into the field. And there is a considerable cost to running power another 100 meters. Now, the alternative location so from a network and radio engineering standpoint and constructability standpoint, it's about the same. It's not going to make that much difference to anything. But our concern was, we're moving it into another field where, again, to the south of it, there's a whole bunch of homes. So are we kind of going from someone's backyard to somebody else's backyard? And then what does that do to the public process? Are we starting that all over again as well and doing another big notification? And then what do we say to those residents who might say, well, why don't you put it up Oxbow Road so it's away from us? We still want the internet, but we'd rather it be in a different neighborhood. So that's kind of where we ended up with this. We thought pushing it deeper into the field would be a good compromise.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer. Councillor Pierce, do you think, did you feel that answered your?
I guess it's
concerns?
6 of one, half the other. I was just looking for a response. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, we were going to do that, but I appreciate it. Okay, we're close to the public now. I'll ask committee how they want to deal with this. If I can get a motion to receive for information, Councillor Coleman, Councillor Wheat, any questions, discussions before we turn it back to our planner? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, so again, Cyrus, you know what's going to happen. This is going to go back to our planner, but I think, yeah, I guess we're going to have another public meeting on that. You're going to let staff know when that's going to happen. So, and then we'll see it from there. So thank you for coming out tonight. Appreciate that. We're going to continue on.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Good night. We're now on section 8, public hearings under the Plan Act to receive information from the public. We have 2 this evening. The first one, ZBA 28-21, and our planner Amanda is going to present. So Amanda, anytime you're ready, start sharing your screen.
Just let me know if you're able to see it.
Yes.
Perfect. Oh, I highlighted it. Okay. So thank you through the chair. An application for rezoning has been received from George Ziotek on behalf of Andres and Malgorzata Pollock. Oops. The subject lands are located within Mount Pleasant. They are located on the east side of Mount Pleasant Road and are generally located south of McGill Road and north of Ellis Avenue. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from agricultural and natural heritage to suburban residential and natural heritage. The applicant is also seeking a site-specific provision for reduced frontage. The purpose of the rezoning is to facilitate a future severance. And then in regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated as suburban residential and natural heritage. The subject lands are also located within the secondary urban settlement area of Mount Pleasant, and the suburban residential designation contemplates for limited residential development, and the applicant is proposing to construct the dwelling outside of the portion identified as natural heritage. And then in terms of the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned as agricultural and natural heritage. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion from agricultural to suburban residential to be aligned with the official plan. And then the applicant is also proposing to rezone a portion from agricultural to holding suburban residential due to water capacity restrictions. And the applicant is seeking a site-specific provision for reduced frontage as the zoning bylaw requires 20 meters, whereas they are proposing approximately 18.6. And then in terms of next steps, comments from the public and commenting agencies are to be reviewed. I will be preparing a recommendation report, and then I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that, Amanda. Are there any questions for our planner at this time on this application? Okay, I don't see any hands up. So we will go to the agent or the applicant if they wish to speak to this application tonight. Do we have someone?
Yes, am I on?
Is this George Ziotek Senior? Yes, you're on.
Yeah, okay, good evening. I'm sorry, I was trying to fidget around because I wasn't sure whether I was on or off the system. But good evening, thank you for this opportunity. My name is George Ziotek and I'm representing the proponents on this particular application. I just received this morning some comments from the neighboring owners of properties. So I haven't had a chance to really go through and review and study the comments and respond accordingly. I'm assuming I'll have an opportunity therefore to review and be able to contribute my responses to Amanda and basically consider the application further as it's going to be moved along.
Okay, thank you, George. Any further comments or things you want to raise?
No, at this point, I don't think there's anything that's sort of throwing itself up as far as an issue. Just very basically reading the commentary from the neighbors. Yes, that'll have to be taken into account and obviously addressed. And I'll be talking with the proponents to further that discussion.
Okay, thank you. What I'll do then, George, I'll open it up to the committee. And is there any committee member that wishes to ask a question of the applicant? Okay, I don't see any at this point. So what I'll do then, we will open this up to the public, and I'll go to our clerk, Adam, and ask if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have anyone registered for this one, but if there's anyone here, there's a couple of unidentified names, so there may be someone wishing to speak to it.
Okay. Is there anyone tonight present speaking to this application? And I'll ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask one more time, third and final time, if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Okay, so I don't see or hear anyone, so we'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring it back to the committee, and I'll ask the committee how they wish to deal with this. Can I get a motion to move to receive for information? Councillor Pierce, Mayor Bailey, any comments, questions, discussions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, so George, what's going to happen then? The comments from the public and any other matters that come up, it goes back to the planner, and at some point we expect to see this application again with a recommendation from staff. Okay, when that'll happen, I don't know, but I guess a lot depends on you. So I appreciate you coming.
I will be channeling information through Amanda, and we'll see how we handle this whole application. Then. I really appreciate the opportunity.
If you could say hi to George Zotek Jr., I'd appreciate that. So
I will do that. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, so that completes 8-1 for this evening. We'll go to 8-2. This is ZBA 2417-RC, Ryan Cummins. And this is for 517 Paris Road. So Ryan, your screen is up, shared. So go ahead anytime you're ready.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject lands are located on the south side of Paris Road, east of Oak Park Road. Subject lands are presently contain a single detached dwelling and are approximately 0.47 hectares or 1.18 acres in size. Subject lands are situated within the primary urban settlement area of Paris and are currently designated as general commercial in the County of Brant official plan. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from rural residential to general commercial C2 in order to permit the development of a gas bar, convenience store, and drive-through restaurant. This application was previously brought forward at the October 2017 Planning Advisory Committee. This was, of course, the previous term of council. The applicant at the time was requested to submit a complete site plan application in order for staff to review the detailed studies associated with that proposal at the time. The applicant has since submitted a complete site plan application, which included a number of technical studies and drawings, such as traffic impact study, noise study, environmental site assessments, engineered drawings, plan justification report, among others, in order to address many of the comments and questions that have arisen, of course, previous from 2017, and then as well as what we've heard as of late through the circulation of this application. There have been several questions that have arisen regarding the conflicting official plan designation and zoning of the subject lands. And so I thought quickly we'd just make a brief summary of the purpose of the official plan, which is, of course, the official plan is the County of Brant's tool to guide plan change and physical development of the county over the planning horizon. The county's official plan provides direction for future development and addresses topics such as permitted uses and development policies, which are ultimately implemented by the county's zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw dictates what form of development can take place at the present time and can be amended through a zoning bylaw amendment application, which is what we're dealing with here. Another question which has risen, and I'd like to apologize for this, is with respect to the inaccuracies in the county's GIS system and property lines which are shown on our GIS system and through our circulation. This question did come up in 2017 when we first reviewed this project. That was properly addressed in our system. However, we did use the original circulation mapping for this round. So I just wanted to clarify, and hopefully it just shows well on the screen I'm sharing now. This is the updated GIS system. Again, the county's GIS system is not official legal survey. It's a general representation of property lines, but this is the most up-to-date information, and that will be addressed and updated in our next circulation when it comes back for recommendation. With that being said, staff will take any comments or questions back for consideration, and we'll be bringing forward a recommendation report at a later date. Staff is recommending that this application be received for information purposes only at this time. And again, we'll be coming back with a formal recommendation at a later date, pending the outcome of this meeting, as well as hopefully addressing many of the comments and questions that have come up. So again, thank you. That concludes my remarks. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. A lot of apologizing going on that one. I don't think we need that many, but that's okay. Any questions for Ryan at this time from the committee? Okay, we'll start with my right, which is Councillor House, and we'll go to Councillor Fair, Councillor Bell. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ryan. My question relates to the part of your presentation where you're talking about land designation. And if I'm not clear on whether the land designation was established as general commercial when the OP was done 10 years ago, or whether it was done before that when all of the communities got to amalgamated to become the County of Brant. So I'm not clear on that, and the difference doesn't matter. But my question is, when the designation is established like that as general commercial for this land area, are the residents made aware? I'm just wondering if the people who live in these areas that are zoned residential, I'm curious as to the overall awareness of the umbrella designation of that, the future of this area is designated general commercial. Is that something you can answer for me?
Okay, I think I can respond to both items there. With respect to the establishment of the general commercial designation, the county passed or adopted, our post-amalgamation, we'll call it, official plan or original official plan for the County of Brant in 2003. And the subject lands from my research here were originally, through that post-amalgamation OP, were designated highway commercial. Highway commercial was eliminated for 2012 OP and was sort of wrapped in with general commercial. And so, you can say that it's been there existing at least since 2003. And don't have great access to our previous official plans within the counties, but I could certainly look into that from the original OP, which would have been Brantford Township, I believe it was. With respect to notification, it's similar to what we're dealing with our OP review right now. Again, I wasn't working with the county at the time, but typically the county does everything they can in our power to notify residents at large that the OP review is ongoing, and individual site level notifications are not made available to each and every individual property owner. As you can imagine, through our current OP process, that would be quite the undertaking. And so it's more a general notification in paper, more other avenues. I hope that helps answer it. Feel free to follow up if I missed something.
Thank you.
No, it's a good question, especially in light of our current OP process. So, and as we try and stress OP, the OPs are very important. So good question, Councillor House. Go to Councillor Ferrier next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few, if you'll so indulge. Some of these come from the residents on that street who have sent them in, and I know some have been answered in private emails, but some haven't. The first one's an easy one through you to Ryan. You listed off a number of studies that were done. I kind of, you listed them off pretty quickly. I didn't catch all of them. Could you just repeat that? Which studies have been done on this? Which impact studies?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, if you give me a moment, I have.
Yep.
Can we circle back to that? Perhaps I have
Sure.
bring up a file. I mean, most site plans are standard, if I can be honest, and I can usually give you the same ones for almost everything we do on a commercial level, for example. But if you can bear with me here, I can pull it up.
Just don't run out the whole clock.
Yeah, that's fine. No, site plan, I apologize. I'm just going to run through them here because there's quite
Sure.
a few. And if you'll just stop me or have any questions, site plan, grading and servicing plans, the footings and floor plan elevations, environmental site assessment, phase 1 and 2, noise study, plan justification report, stormwater management brief, traffic report. I apologize here. Hang on.
No, that's okay.
And elevation details with respect to signs. Yeah.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, anything on lighting or groundwater impact with the wells?
I apologize. I'll have to double check here. The applicant should be providing a photometrics plan. And we can circle back on that. I'm sure I could find it here. Or again,
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't know, Ryan, that's a really good question for the applicant too.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
Mr. Glover could clarify that. I apologize.
Another question from residents is about concerns about littering and trash. If this is approved, trash and litter that goes off-site, off of the proposed area, who's responsible for cleaning that up? There's a lot of public spaces, the public road. So is that then work for our municipal staff that'll then be having to do more to clean that area up?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not unlike other commercial developments, if we have issues with respect to litter or waste exiting the site, we're happy to advise our bylaw enforcement folks. We haven't heard any particular concerns from them with this in this regard, though.
Okay. My next one, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, through you to Ryan. When we're looking at this around, I know there's traffic studies done, and I was reading some of them, but it really, to me, stated more that, traffic currently is okay, as opposed to what may happen with the traffic here. I don't know if anybody else was able to drive down this road repeatedly this weekend while the antique shop was doing their thing, but just that created so much more congestion and traffic. I imagine people slowing to turn left and right. Will we need a traffic light? I guess as a question as well, if we were to approve this, and will we need one on each side because of the increase in traffic and the slowing, the speeding? We have data, I'm sure, because I know we got the speed spy up there more recently as well. This is a high traffic, high speed area that in one way it's good if things slow down, but in another way, I saw the congestion of just folks parking on the side of the road. I imagine what that would be like. And I wonder if you have any comments about what those issues may create for the public at large, not the NIMBYism, but the public at large with this sort of development being proposed here. And on top of that, on the days when we have these, province-wide famous antique stops with a double whammy, how do we adjust for that if we approve this?
Mr. Chair, as a land use planner, I am not an expert in traffic engineering. I think, sorry, I'm trying to think of a couple comments you had made there with, I think one was with respect to whether or not signalized intersection upgrades were required. From what I've read in the traffic study and the comments of our engineering staff, that's not warranted based on the current traffic, current volumes that we're experiencing at that intersection. And again, as land use planner and not as a traffic expert by any means, we can only plan for what we have currently and what we can forecast as best we can, but we can't require developers to mitigate for what may be future numbers, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. They have to accommodate what is being developed today. I don't know if Matt wants to weigh on that at all, but again, as a planner, it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And Ryan brought up a pretty good point. We try not to weigh in on matters that aren't in our wheelhouse. Luckily for us, we do have in-house expertise on this matter, and they did review the traffic study and didn't identify there being any issues with it. So that's the expertise that we do rely on.
Okay. And one quick one, this one I promise will be quicker, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. Is there anything in the land use piece in the part that Matt or Ryan, whoever wants to answer this, in the part that you're responsible for, where we as a county have some maybe commentary or is there a way to look at things based on perceived need in the community? One letter here states rightfully that there are like 7 coffee shops in a 6.8 kilometer radius. There's, a Tim Hortons literally, less than 2 kilometers down the road, and a gas station, neither of which are at capacity by any means at any time of day. There's also a huge strip on Dundas that seems to me to be a place where this kind of development would be a good fit. But do we have any mechanisms within the planning piece to suggest that, or to move those sort of things, or to deny based on that?
I'll jump in on this one, Ryan. So through the chair to Councillor Leferrier, it's a good question. I think in terms of Tim Hortons, they have, through their franchise agreements, they have certain distances that they have to be from each other. But other type businesses, no, we don't specify what kinds of businesses, whether they're the same or not. Zoning looks more at a general use, and then things like a Tim Hortons would be like a restaurant type use. So if the site permits a restaurant, that would be a number of different businesses could come in there. It's in this instance, it's just maybe a coincidence or not that it's a Tim Hortons, but it seems to be an accessory use to the gas bar.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Councillor Bell next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ryan. And really, it's 2 questions that follow up on what Councillor Ferrier has asked. I recall pretty early in my time on council, it might even have been before I got to council, and I was on the Committee of Adjustment, we approved a gas bar site just down the road, literally within 500 meters. And so there's the same question that Mark has asked, what can we do to bring sensible logic to the number of gas bars we need on a stretch of road that is already served by one just further up and another one further down once you get into Brantford. Could you tell me where we are with that other gas bar? I think it was a Pioneer gas bar just before the old schoolhouse.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I had followed up with my colleague, Mr. Namizniak, who's working on a site plan. They're working through some details with respect to that. That one's been going on a while. I'll give you that. I was working on that at one point as well. They're working through some of the detailed engineering design. Interestingly, that site is the boundary lands for the city of Brantford, and so there's some technical details to be worked out with respect to traffic coming from the city of Brantford into the county of Brant, and that's been taking quite some time. I seem to recall that application that the Committee of Adjustment would have heard was with respect to a consent application to create a lot for the development of that gas bar. It would appear that, or I've confirmed with my colleague Dan, that the review of that site plan is ongoing, and we don't have a firm timeline, but we're working through it.
Yeah, just a personal view, I'd struggle to see 2 gas bars within 500 meters of each other. But I would need some guidance from planning staff as to what we could legitimately say or do about that. Second question really is around the traffic lights issue. And Ryan, you just mentioned the issue of traffic coming from Brantford. And one of the reasons we haven't solved the issue with the other gas bar request is that we're still working through the traffic study from the county of from the city of Brantford. If I recall from the City of Brantford Transportation Master Plan, they identified the junction of Oak Park Road and Paris Road as a future, well, as a bottleneck that's coming, and the one that they saw would need signalized a junction. Have our own traffic department spoken with the folks from the city to confirm that indeed we do not need a traffic light there should we have a new gas bar at that very corner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't confirm that. That would be typically those types of projects are run through the county's operations and public works groups, but I can certainly follow up in that regard. Absolutely, that's a valid question. So we will make a point to follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll go to Councillor Gatward next. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I was thinking the same thing about maybe we need a traffic light. But then as I read further into the staff report, our development engineering department has suggested a two-way left turn lane, which they refer to as TWFLFTL, as an acronym if we don't have enough, but it's a two-way left turn lane in the center. So because these are rural arterial roads, it would facilitate keeping the traffic flowing and yet allowing trucks or vehicles, customers for these new gas stations to have a spot to stop or slow down before they turn into the gas station. And I thought, okay, that's a great idea. We see middle turn lanes in the city on King George Road where they have gas stations across the road from each other. In the city in West Brant, there's two across the road from each other. I think they do it on purpose because it's competition. And competition is good for our ratepayers because sometimes it lowers gas prices. I know that we can't imagine having so many in the town of Paris, but our town is growing. And that's why I think the developers are now starting to be interested in bringing their projects to fruition. So those are just my comments. And I would agree with the staff report that says that the development community pay for the design and construction of those left turn lanes. That should not be the taxpayers. Thank you.
Just a reminder, Joan, we were just asking questions at this point. Okay, we will have time for comments later.
Okay, well, my question is, will staff be definitely implement those left turn lanes as a condition in this application with the cost being paid by the developer? That's my question.
I can jump in on that one through the chair, through Councillor Atwood. I believe you might be referring to the requirements of another application we have before us tonight at 539 Paris Road.
Yeah, in that one, they do refer to left turn lanes. I didn't see anything referred to in this report, so.
But it said developers. It was plural. And so I thought, okay, aren't we going to just, these are very close together. Would we not continue that left turn lane for the whole area?
Yeah, Matt, go ahead if you can help us out.
Yeah, through the chair, the Councillor Gatward, one option that we do have, if council does have some concerns with traffic in this area and continues to have some concerns with the traffic study that was done for 517 Paris Road, is we could have that study peer reviewed. We do have that policy in our official plan, and we can use it at our discretion or at council's discretion. So that is an option if council so wishes it.
Okay, Joan.
Yeah, at 517, we could have it peer reviewed. And I think that's a great idea because was the traffic study done 4 years ago when this first came to us or prior to that?
All right. Is that a question or a comment?
Yeah, it was a question I asked. Was the traffic study done in 2017 or prior to that?
My apologies, Mr. Chair, I can chime in. I was just trying to find it. The latest version of that traffic report was dated November of 2020.
So afterwards, okay.
Oh, it was
that's a long, 4 years is a long time for traffic. Okay, thank you, Joan. Any other questions for first time? I don't see any hands up. Okay, so we'll go to Councilor Ferrier for a second time. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just follow up around the peer review. If we do opt for a peer review, and I'm very much in favor of that, will it look at the updated county and city, because it's so close, transportation master plans, and put that into account in the analysis? Because I do think that's important with all the other development happening. Yeah, so if anybody can answer that through you, Mr. Chair.
Ryan or Matt?
I could tackle that one. As through the chair to Councilor Ferrier, as part of that review, that is something that we could request the peer reviewer to do.
Okay, and to you, Mr. Chair, do we do that through a motion, or is that something you want to tackle later? So I'd be happy to make that.
I would I think we'll be okay if that's direction to staff.
Okay, great.
Ryan, is that acceptable?
Yeah,
I mean, keep in mind that's why we're here tonight, right? To give input. So I don't think we need a particular motion on every suggestion. So, but it's a good suggestion. Any other questions from the committee before we move on? Okay, Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the planner. In terms of appropriateness of the site, in terms of compatibility with the neighborhood, do you just want to maybe outline what the planner's viewpoints are with this application in terms of compatibility with the neighboring near proximity of residential uses? And how is that addressed in a planning sense?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, as a County of Brant staff member, I take my direction primarily from the county's official plan as well as provincial policies. The subject lands are designated as general commercial. All of the uses are specifically stated as being permitted in section 3.9.2 of the official plan. And with respect to development adjacent to sensitive land uses, there are specific policies within the official plan that direct this type of development to adequately mitigate and buffer from adjacent sensitive land uses. Typically, we put requirements in our zoning bylaw to specifically require this, such as landscape strips, separation, setbacks. Obviously, there is conflict, but mitigation is typically our primary form of dealing with this. The official plan designation allows for it. And so therefore, it's our best option, in my estimation, to mitigate and buffer where appropriate.
Councilor Chambers, are you okay with that?
Yeah, for now, Mr. Chairman, I think that's going to be an issue that the neighborhood is going to bring up in terms of the close proximity of residential uses to this particular designated for commercial use.
Yep. Okay, any other questions for Ryan at this time? I'm just going to ask a quick question then, Ryan. Water, I understand we have a water main there, municipal water main. Will they be tapping into that? And then municipal sewage, we don't have it there. The plan is to get it down that road in it, which I guess might take a couple of years. Is the plan, might be a good question for the applicant, but I'm asking if you know, is the plan for this development to tap into the municipal sewage at that point? Do you know what the?
Right, and so I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to pull up the information provided by our operations group, because that was addressed specifically with respect to upcoming wastewater servicing in the immediate area. And I will paraphrase here as best I can, but the county has addressed municipal servicing sanitary design for this area in the Paris Master Servicing Plan, construction being planned for 2021. I think that's probably been pushed back at this point, but yeah, the developer will be required to connect to municipal servicing, as that will be available at the frontage, and that's the county's policy to use municipal servicing where available.
Okay, it's not available now. Okay, I'll leave that for the applicant. So, okay, no other questions. I'm going to call the plan. Sorry, the plan. I'm going to call the applicant or the agent thereof to come and speak to us on this application. And I believe they are here. Terrence, you go ahead anytime you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee, or sorry, council. Nice to see you all. You'll recall back in 2017 that Kahuna Engineering brought this application forward, and a number of the issues were brought forward by the public at that time. To my knowledge and seeing the comments that were received, those comments have not changed, which is perplexing on two levels. A, the official plan was approved back in 2003 for commercial, then reaffirmed 2012. Then the application was brought forward to a public meeting in 2017. And the residents in this area, who now fully well know that this will be a commercial site surrounded by industrial lands as per the approved official plan by either your prior council or members of council sit today, that they're now surprised or concerned with commercial development in adjacent to their homes. Again, they had all this time to be able to mitigate their issues. They had since 2017, knowing what the site would become or proposed to become, and they have done nothing to mitigate their own concerns other than to raise concerns back in 2017. Through those concerns and through the planning staff, we've gone through numerous studies to support this development in terms of traffic, in terms of environmental, in terms of noise, et cetera, at great cost to the developer to mitigate and to prove that this is a good development. We've jumped through every hurdle that the municipal staff has asked us to jump through. We are going through site plan approval, which will fine tune this development, I guess. All we're asking for today is the zoning. This is a public meeting, so we understand there's no decision today. It's more for information and to ask the public for their information. And we want to build something here that reflects and is in conformity and is the instruction of the county to build in this fashion. This landowner, the comments that I've heard today from council, as well as what we will hear from the public, concern the rights of the landowners who live in this area. But only one councillor did I hear, roughly speaking, the rights of the landowner who owns this property. He too is a citizen of your county. He too has property rights, and he has followed every rule that the county has offered or given him to be able to develop this property. So generally speaking, the landowner should have the ability to develop the property in a way that the county has instructed him to develop the property, which is commercial or general commercial. Furthermore, we've had discussion about a peer review of the traffic report. We have done one traffic report. The county asked us to go back and look at it again. We've done a second traffic report, an addendum to that, to look at the traffic considerations in this area, to suggest that we need a peer review of that traffic report now. Will communicate to the rest of the development community that Brant County is not open for business, that you're putting barriers up to prevent business from happening. And I'm sure that's not the case here, but I want to caution that's the message that will be given, because again, we followed every rule that we've been asked to do. We've done everything that we could do to develop this site. And so as such, we're presenting this. Now, saying that, to discount the residents' concerns would be an error, because they do live there and there are concerns that they've raised, and we do want to address them. And through our studies and that, we've tried to mitigate or suggest that. If we can switch to the next slide. You'll see that, and this is stuff you already know, I'm sure, but you're in the growth plan area. So you're designated to take some of the growth of Southern Ontario. In growing, you have a population, but you also need a good business case, whether it's industrial or commercial, to offset your tax base. Otherwise, you'll be a bedroom community and you'll be in deficit for taxes. So part of the reason this area is M3 or industrial and commercial is because the jobs are needed for the people who live in your community, as well as the tax base is needed to offset the residential tax base in the future. If we can go to the next slide. So the blue area is industrial or employment, we'll call it. That's what it's called. And the pink area is commercial. You can see the whole area is designated for redevelopment at some point. It's designated in the official plan so that this whole area will be redeveloped in the near future. When you guys update the zoning bylaw has to be in conformity with the official plan. So essentially, all these rural residential zones will become commercial or industrial, and the uses, the residential uses that are currently there, will become legal non-conforming uses. That hasn't happened yet because your zoning has not caught up to your official plan at this point in time, which it will. It's mandated that it must in the future. We can go to the next slide. Now, what we've done here is try to utilize the property to buffer the uses away from the community. So the drive-through would be at the corner of the intersection, away from the houses. The gas pumps would be situated again away from the houses as much as we can to facilitate the site here. The tanks and underground, etc., will be located to best serve or best protect the areas. The ins and outs, ingress, egress, or the driveways have been located far enough away from the intersection, or as far as we can locate them, so that, again, there's no conflicts that way. We do have some landscape area. We do have a site for a septic system. I know the question was asked about servicing. There's a site for a septic system. Obviously, servicing, it's estimated, isn't going to be there for at least 3 years or so. So we want the option to connect into the septic system if we want to develop early, or we can wait for 3 years and hook into the sewer system when it does become available. So I mean, that's the option that we will resolve that option, but that is the alternatives, I guess. Again, we've done environmental studies to show that there's no contamination. We've done noise studies, traffic studies, the planning justification that you've seen. If we can go to the next slide as well. That's fine, you can keep there. So again, this whole area is RR, which when the zoning bylaw amendment is done, or housekeeping amendment to bring the zoning into conformity, it will all change the general commercial. So it's not that these are residential properties, it's that they currently are occupied by dwellings, which will be phased out over time. So when the public says that this is a residential community or this is a neighborhood, perhaps it is or it was, but under the current official plan, as approved by the council, whether your predecessors or yourself, it will not be in the future. And the residents had from 2003, 2012, 2017, which I discussed, that opportunity to either phase out of this area or to sell for commercial uses, or to anticipate that commercial uses will be coming around them. And again, I don't want to discount their opinions or their beliefs, because if I lived there, I would be concerned as well. But that is a reality. And as a planner, we have to look for the future, and we have to follow the instructions given to us by the council, which is you, as to what these landforms will be. To suggest that we need to stifle or to change or to slow down the progress of that development following your instructions would be detrimental to the property rights of this property owner and the potential sale of properties surrounding this area. I mean, if we develop this as a commercial, the property beside it could again be developed as commercial, therefore the property values would go up to sell or redevelop as a commercial activity. If they stay as residential, it will become a legal non-conforming use, and it's anticipated that will phase out and become a commercial use in the future. So these are things that we've looked at, and things that the neighborhood should appreciate and should understand how it will go in the future. Let's see if I have any notes here. Just looking over what the councilors had brought up just to see. So the photometric report, that will be done as part of the site plan approval, and we will ensure that there'll be no trespass onto the hitting the neighbors' buildings or anything, so there's no sight line issues and the neighbors can sleep at night and things of that nature. Litter trash, again, is a bylaw enforcement, as with if you have litter trash on your residential property, you need to clean it up, obviously, and we would too. In terms of the need, whether a coffee shop or a gas bar, the county has the opportunity to ask for a market study, but they only have that ability to do so if it's in your official plan that you can ask for a market study. And typically that's done for very large uses like a shopping center or a Walmart or something that they used to call years ago category killers. In this case, it's a gas bar, and obviously the owners of the gas bar And the owners of the Tim Hortons have a responsibility to their leasees or what do you call it? Whatever, the companies that buy these uses, they have an obligation to them to make sure that they have a viable market. And so the studies from the marketing and business side, which I'm not privy to, have been done to show that this is a viable site. So in terms of the need, it may not appear as though there's need, but there is more competition, there's more market available to allow this to go. In terms of traffic lights, we have heard in the future that there may be a need for traffic lights at Oak Park and Paris Road. Currently, with our development, they're not needed. In the future, if basically what we're saying is if all these properties around us develop as commercial, then yeah, you're going to, in my opinion, you're going to need a traffic light in the future. Right now,
Mr. Glover, I just want to jump in. You have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, I'll do quick. With our opinion, the traffic lights aren't warranted at this time. Will they be needed 20 years from the future or 10 years? Perhaps, but not because of our site. Finally, compatibility of the neighborhood. We've discussed that and we've mitigated best we can. I'd be happy to answer any questions council has or perhaps respond to any neighbors' concerns through Mr. Chair, if you so direct them to me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Terrence. We'll turn it over to the committee. Anybody have questions of the agent? Councillor Howes, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the presenter. Thanks for the refresher on growth management. That's always appreciated. Towards the end of your presentation, you mentioned that if you were a residential neighbor, you would share some of the same concerns. At the beginning of your presentation, you said that the residential neighbors have had 4 years to mitigate their concerns. I'd like to give you an opportunity to explain a little further and in more detail how the residential neighbors should have mitigated their concerns on an adjacent property.
So when I'll give you this response, this is not meant to inflame or to cause argument. It's basically factual. If I lived on a property next to a potential commercial site, which essentially being a reasonable person, I would anticipate that at some point in time, it would become a commercial site, whether a gas station or an office building or a convenience store or whatever. And I knew that it was going to be coming within the next 4 years or so. I may look to sell my property to get out of the situation, or I would look in the future to redesignate my property for commercial use so that I would benefit from that myself. My understanding is the neighbors have done nothing of the sort. They've maintained their residential use and they haven't sold. They haven't ventured into, allowing commercial uses on here. It appears to me they're anticipating to be a residential use forever and a day. And whether we would like that, unfortunately, that's not the reality of what the objectives of the official plan is telling us that we will be doing in the future. So again, it's just factual. There's no, I don't mean to inflame anybody, but that's the reality of it.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks. Just if I can follow up with a comment, not a question, Councillor Miller or Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I believe the answer the answer I heard, I believe, was that these folks should have either moved or planned to move, and not envision continuing their lifestyle in their residential form. And I'll admit I'm struggling a little bit because I can picture when the property of this application, I recall when it was like old heritage tourist cabins and very much a residential, an odd but a unique residential area that you drove past on your way to Brantford. So I'll be very interested in seeing how the rest of this discussion goes. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the agent? Councillor Pierce, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So a couple things here, and I've got a question in here, so please bear with me. First of all, Councillor Howes did kind of allude to some of the original things I was going to bring up. Again, you talk about, being a bedroom community and being growth. if you look at the growth that we've had in the last 2 years since your traffic study has been done, I would suggest it's time for another traffic study. 2020, even if it was late 2020, the amount of building that has gone on in Paris alone in the last year and a half would suggest that you need an additional traffic study. As far as the statement that you made about surprised or concerned as to what is going beside them, I don't think they're surprised, but they're very concerned. I don't think their opinion has changed. And what I'm trying to understand here is, and I know that there was a lot of questions when this came in 2017, I was on council at that point in time, in regards to the truck fueling right on the diesel fueling right on the edge of the property there, which is right next to a residential home. There was a question back then, would there be consideration of potentially removing that? So you suggesting that the residents around this area have done nothing. The plan I'm seeing in front of me, you folks have done nothing to change anything in the plan of this. Was it discussed by your people, any possibility of removing that truck fueling? That's my first question.
Brant, go ahead.
For you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. To clarify, what we've done is we've done our justification reports to prove that this will work. Now, the comment about the truck fueling for diesel, so to give you a little bit of background, so we weren't the consultants on this originally. It was Cahoon. We were asked to come on board last year to move this forward. In our discussions with the owner, discussing with them some of the concerns that the neighbors had raised, the owner is in agreement to remove that truck diesel refueling so that the transport trucks will not have an opportunity to refuel at the site. It will be a vehicular car refueling only. So I commit to you, I guess is the word, that through our site plan process, and your planning staff can confirm this when they go through, we can remove that through the site plan approval.
Okay, well, I thank you for that. That's fantastic news. I wish that would have been taken off of here, because that would have, I'm sure, relieved some of the concerns of these residents. The second question I have is the fact of, you speak of the growth of the area and Paris not open for business if we tell you that you have to do, I believe, an additional traffic study on that. I guess my question to you is, do you, and I'm looking for your opinion here, do you honestly feel that if we were to not approve this application, that the county of Brant would not be open for business? Those were your words, and I'm looking for your statement.
Oh yeah, if the council decided that the zoning bylaw that conforms to the official plan that the county is putting forward is denied, then yes, I feel you very strongly are saying to the business community that regardless of the rules that we have in place, we may do whatever we want, which may or may not impact your business. So therefore, if I was a business owner, I'd say, well, Brantford maybe isn't running the same way. They're a little bit more rules oriented, and they follow the rules that they set out. And Brant County, although they have rules in their official plan, they're not following their own rules. It's a little bit more of a Wild West situation. So to answer your question, if I was a developer, I would be concerned if I saw this happen. Now, if I was asking for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, and you denied it, I would say, you know what, they just don't want it there. That makes sense to me. But you've told the development community that you want this type of use to be there. And the zoning bylaw that we're asking for is conformity with that. And if you were to refuse that, then yes, that's a very large signal that the council will do things differently than their official plan says.
Okay, well, I appreciate that response, and I will finish off with a comment if I can, Mr. Chair. Regardless if this goes or not, I can guarantee you that the county of Brant will be open for business long into the future, with or without this development. Thank you.
Councilor Ferrier, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Terrence. Terrence, you spoke a lot about rights, and I guess my question surrounds rights and the balance of rights and responsibility. The property owner in question that you're representing has rights and responsibilities. The neighbors do too, as does council. We have the right to ask these questions. As a council, I have a right to state my opinion, and anybody else on council has a right to state their opinion. And you've been very blunt, and I feel comfortable enough to be blunt as well, that personally, I don't think this is necessarily the right fit for this community, this road, this street. And as somebody who you've worked in municipal staff in Pelham and Brantford and Halton Hills and Burlington, so you know that we have certain rights. We have a right to ask for a peer review of a study if we don't think that it's accurate, or we just want to make sure we have due diligence, because this is a main arterial road in a community that's been besieged by traffic issues, in a community that's been very open for business. If you look at our economic development stats and our building stats, and record breaking year after year after year, only slowing down now despite a pandemic, and not because of one. So I happen to think that this is going to create a lot of issues around traffic and quality of life, and not in the NIMBYism way that some of the neighbors may, they want to open a window and they'll hear noise. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the greater good of the community. So I want to kind of take it on that level. So all that's within our rights. You characterized almost questioning that, or asking for some of that as like against the rules, or the Wild West. Is that, can you clarify that just for me? Because I'm getting a little confused by the sort of dichotomy of having rights, but also it being Wild West to follow those processes.
Yeah, what I meant was we've done essentially 2 traffic studies at the request of your staff, and the latest one was done 2020. And to ask for a peer review of that is surprising. I do appreciate that. Yes, of course, you do have the rights to ask for that. And if you feel, regardless of what staff say, if you personally as a counselor representing your constituents feel that there is a potential concern, you're able to ask for a peer review. Absolutely. My thing is, and again, I'm not as you said, I've been a planner for a very long time. I've seen many things come and go. I went from planning technician all the way up to director of planning. I own my own company now. And again, I represent developers, landowners, etc. And I do not mean to be cheeky for the sake of it, but when you impose what appears to be onerous conditions on a development that is trying to follow the rules of the official plan before it, it does speak to the development community. And I know that Brant County is open for business. I know you want to diversify your tax base, but if this isn't approved eventually, obviously I'm not making a decision this evening, and there's further work to be done on it, but if this is not approved, it's going to send a message. And I'm sorry, it will. And I'm speaking from experience. I'm not trying to be inflammatory. Okay, appreciate that. I'm just telling you as it is. I work with development community all the time. And if someone sees what's happening here, and there's a site that's 50-50 in terms of value or usefulness, they'll go where they know they can get the approval very easily. That's how development works.
Well, and that may be, Mr. Chair, through you, that may be true in the short term. I understand that logic, but in the long term, I look at what we did with Tap the Brakes, and we had a lot of developers come into town and say, you're telling the development community you don't care about them, and you're imposing these things. And we had a almost 2 year, it was supposed to be almost 2 year moratorium on new applications for development. And we've had developers come to us since then to say, we're glad things didn't happen because we looked at some other communities nearby who developers had to stop in their tracks with basements finished but not being able to develop because of a lack of capacity. So we were doing careful governance, even though at the moment in the short term it didn't feel like that to them. We've had developers come to us repeatedly. Councillor Howes and I were just in a meeting with a developer who said that the process is so much better now because we've gotten rid of the backlog, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes that careful consideration, that asking for one man's onerous is another person's careful. I guess, my only other question to you would be, you said if you were a neighbor, you'd have concerns too. What would those concerns be?
Well, to go back to your first point about, we are doing what we are expected to do on this site. The council, previously or current, have decided the direction that this will be a commercial site. And so we've done everything we've been asked to do a commercial. To suggest that, and you're not suggesting, but if some people may suggest that this is not an appropriate site for commercial, it's contradictive to what the instruction is. Now, if I live next to this site, my concerns would be noise, would be traffic, would be lighting, and would be the amenity, how this site's going to look. We've done a landscape plan to show how it's going to look. We've done a traffic study to show how it's going to function. We've done a lighting study is underway, so that will be done to show that there will be no trespass of lighting. And noise, we've done a study to show that the noise will be won't be any different than, actually probably less than what the street noise will be. So if I was a landowner beside and I want to maintain my residential use, those are the things that I'd be concerned with. And those are the studies that we've undertaken to prove that this is a viable development.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Councillor Chambers, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the applicant. I talked a little bit previously to the planner about compatibility, and that's what I think the issue is going to come down to. And one of the tools, the major tool, is site plan control. And we already heard you say that in contrary to the schematic that is presented to us, this diesel truck fueling location will be altered. I'm just wondering if with compatibility to the neighboring residents to the south, directly to the south, I'm wondering some of the site plan control plans. You're a planner, you might have some suggestions, and perhaps by the time this comes back to our next meeting, maybe some of the ideas that you may have to mitigate some of the neighbors' concerns to the south with regard to site plan. I think you're saying that this schematic that's presented this evening is not etched in stone, and perhaps it can be improved by good planning and with the applicant and staff having a look at it and trying to mitigate as best we can in the eventuality. Whether it's approved or not approved will come down to compatibility with site plan. I'm wondering if you could maybe just comment on that briefly now, and perhaps what can be done prior to the next meeting where an approval may be sought.
Sure, I appreciate your comment. Compatibility is a compatibility and politics is what this will boil down to, in my opinion. The compatibility is it's a factor for people who live there. And when I talk about if I live next door, the compatibility is an issue that I would look at. And just to give you a little bit of background on where I come from, just so you understand, I'm working for the owner, but I would not represent the owner if I did not fully believe in this project, and I did not fully believe that it's reasonable in terms of the development aspects and how it would impact the neighbors. I started my business because I didn't like how people were getting taken advantage of, and the red tape that they had to go through. And I'm trying to do good planning. I feel for the neighbors, as I'm sure everyone here does. But the neighbors do have to understand as well that this is a commercial area, been planned to be commercial for almost 20 years. And we have to slowly transition to that. So my commitment to you is I will talk with staff. We will see if there's mitigations that can be done to make this even a better design. Even though this will be commercial at some point in time in the future, whatever, we have to talk about the transition from today to tomorrow. And the people who live there do not need to leave, are not going to be forced to leave. They can stay there as long as they want, because even if the zoning changes, they can be a legal non-conforming use and stay there forever and a day. It's when that use discontinues that it changes to commercial. So again, we have to appreciate the people who live there versus what's going to be there in that transition. So I'm thinking just off the top of my head, and I'm not committing, but I'm almost committing, but not committing. I think we can talk about privacy fencing. I think we can talk about enhanced landscape buffering between the uses. When we talk about landscape, we can talk about height of landscape, is it trees, etc. That will provide further buffering, further privacy, if you call it, from these abutting uses, and that will help with the transition from the commercial to the residential. Again, everybody expects that this will be transition at some point in time. That's what your official plan says, and that's what's desired. It's how do we transition? How do we make it as least impactful or least negative as possible for the people who actually live there, because they have rights, we have rights, etc. But we have to work together and live together. So again, I commit to you that we will talk with staff and figure out how to do some further mitigation to better this development, to lessen the impact on the neighborhood and the community.
Councilor Chambers, you're good. Okay, any other questions for Terrence at this point in time? Seeing none. Okay, so we had a lot of questions about traffic, lighting, other mitigation measures. I got one question, Terrence, myself, and that is one of the residents' concerns, and they'll talk about it. They'll come forward, but they're on well water, and is that something you guys would be willing to put in an agreement? And I don't want to, I'm not writing the agreement, but in the site plan, if there were something untoward would be happening, such as a spill and their water became contaminated, is that something that, if it was proven that it come from there, was that something you guys would take responsibility for?
Yeah, so two aspects on that. The gas stations of today are built very, very different than the gas stations of yesterday. So the reason that is because of contamination of yesteryear's gas stations and the financial cost it takes to mitigate those issues. So the gas stations of today are designed to protect against contamination as best possible. Now, the other part of your question there is, if there was a contamination that happened that affected well water, then under the Environmental Protection Act, I can't remember whatever the act it is, but the person who pollutes and causes harm to another person's property is solely responsible to clean that up. So I forget which act that is. I apologize, it's not off the top of my head, but there is a government requirement that if you pollute the site and you contaminate or damage someone else's property, that you are solely liable to clean that up. That's my understanding of the act.
Okay, I appreciate the answer. If I don't see any hands, and I don't see any hands, so what I'm going to do then, Terrence, we're going to stop with the committee questions and we're going to go to the public now. Just have a good listen, because there might be some things coming up that we haven't addressed, and I'll write them down as best I can. But if you hear them, I want you to address them. So yes,
Mr. Chair, if I could, one final point to the members of the public. Feel free to contact me directly. I know you're going to voice your concerns here today, but I'm here to create good planning. So if you have things you want to talk to me directly about, I'm here to answer them. So if I could, if I could tell them my website to go to and to contact me, or through your planner, but I offer that I'm willing to talk to them. I'm not going to ram this down their throat. I'm trying to work with them to figure out the best solution.
okay, I appreciate that. And when we were doing these things live, we would have people sign in at the back of our committee room, and we could get a hold of them that way. So I think the best is maybe if you obviously your contact info is with the planner, we'll go through that process, because we know how to get a hold of the planner. So okay, I appreciate that. So we'll open this part of the meeting up to the public. And Adam, do we have somebody from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
Hi, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I have Cheryl Waldick registered to speak.
Okay, Cheryl, you go ahead, and I should have done this before for public members, but we obviously see your name. Can you just give your address for the clerk, and then go ahead with your presentation?
Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, yours.
Okay, thank you.
Clear as a bell.
Okay, I'll start because I addressed that in my opening statement.
And what's your address, Cheryl? Just
644 Oak Park Road.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Waldick, and I live on Oak Park Road in Brant County, along with my husband, Sonny, and our 3 children. We are very concerned about the newest application for the property at 517 Paris Road to be rezoned from rural residential to general commercial, with the intent to build a gas station along with a convenience store and a Tim Hortons drive-through. We are also concerned with the application for 539 Paris Road with the intention of building a commercial plaza, cold storage facility, a studio workshop with overnight accommodations as well. We do not support either of these applications, and we are asking they will not be approved. I first attended a public information meeting in regards to 517 Paris Road on October 3rd, 2017. This application was met with a lot of concerns, comments, and questions by the surrounding neighbors and people in the community, and ultimately it was not approved. Unfortunately, since it was purchased by the current owner in 2015, who from my understanding lives in British Columbia and has never lived at this address, this property has not been properly maintained and the house has been destroyed. There has been a number of concerns raised with the County of Brant bylaw enforcement regarding this property, including the dumping of tires, improper yard maintenance, rat infestation, and trespassing. This property is zoned rural residential and is located in a well-established residential area and surrounded by farmland. In section 4.1 of the planning justification report, the subject property is clearly stated to be surrounded by a cluster of rural residential homes, agriculture, and scattered industrial buildings. My home was built in the 1920s, and I have lived here with my family for 16 years. We have put a lot of time, energy, and love into our home and take great pride in the life we have built here. A large majority of the homes in this area rely on wells and cisterns as their water sources and septic systems for their household needs. Having put in a new well and septic system in the past couple of years, I am extremely concerned of the impact that can very easily come from living by a gas station. It is well documented that gas stations have an extremely high risk of chemicals leaking into the ground and contaminating the soil and groundwater. My neighbors, the Wheelers, would have their home water source located only 25 feet from the proposed diesel pump and only another 5 feet from their bedroom windows. There are 8 gas pumps in the proposal as well. How is this possible, and is it appropriate to have this so close to their home? Currently, there's a well on the property that is a part of the area's water table. This well would be decommissioned and fuel tanks would be put into the ground about 20 feet from the former well. The hazards and likelihood of fuel leaking into the water table from these tanks during their lifetime are high and would have terrible implications for this area. There is a fence proposed at 2 meters in height only on the south side of this property, which would allow transport trucks to look into the Wheelers' bedroom windows. Their daily way of life would be drastically impacted by this and is very concerning. What protection do we as residents have for our properties, and what recourse do we have from future problems that will come from a gas station? Once a gas station has been on a property, it is almost completely unlikely that the property will be able to have any other type of use afterward, even if expensive remediation is performed. The health and environmental impacts of living in close proximity to a gas station are well documented. This is because fuel contains toxic and carcinogenic chemicals. On the Canada.ca website, it states that if you breathe in high concentrations of gasoline vapor, you are at risk of lung irritation, dizziness, headaches, respiratory issues, neurological effects, and cancer. Diesel particles, which are worse than gasoline, can penetrate the lungs and bloodstream and affect the cardiovascular system. Residents surrounding this property are already affected by complicated health issues, and a gas station would very likely cause more health problems. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety states that gasoline vapors are highly flammable, are heavier than air, and can travel long distances to an ignition source. The homes surrounding this property all enjoy having contained fires in their backyards. Usually we gather together socially. I don't think that will be happening if a gas station were to be built next door. I would also like to note that Chimera Water Solutions is located just down from my home on Oak Park Road, and they deal with hazardous chemicals. We receive notices from them yearly in accordance with the Environmental Emergency Regulations 2019 about the risk of corrosive vapors being released from their facility and how we would be affected in an emergency. Is it safe to have a gas station this close? The intersection of Paris Road and Oak Park Road is impacted by heavy traffic, which has resulted in several accidents in recent years. Twice in less than a year, 2 separate gas meters have been hit by vehicles on Paris Road. Numerous properties in this area have problems entering and exiting their driveways because of the traffic. Canada Post has stopped mail delivery on that stretch of Paris Road because of safety concerns. My children have almost been hit twice by vehicles trying to bike 1.5 kilometers to the SC Johnson trails and 3 times getting off of the school bus in front of our home. There will be an entrance and exit on Paris Road right before the intersection for the gas station. There would also be an entrance and exit on Oak Park Road, which would be almost directly across the entrance and exit for the cold storage facility proposed at 539 Paris Road. These two entrances are only a few meters from our driveways and would cause a significant increase in congestion. Oak Park Road is an emergency detour route for Highway 403 and can be backed up along with Paris Road for hours if there's a problem on the highway. Turning from either direction in this intersection is a nightmare most of the time. There is no traffic light and it is an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone immediately after the intersection. I am concerned after reviewing the planning justification report that was made available to the public on Friday, September the 3rd. In section 3, there is a site plan map for the property labeled figure number 8. It is also the site map that the planner this evening showed in his slideshow. This site plan map is not the same one distributed in the information packages recently sent out to residents. Specifically, the entrance to the drive-through is different. It appears to be the site plan map that was sent in 2017, but they have had the same date and drawing number listed on both. The site plan shows the proposed convenience store is 210.44 meters square, but County of Brant bylaw states convenience store gross floor area cannot exceed 150 meters square. The northwest corner of the building is required to be a setback from the exterior line by 15 meters. This is stated as only 6.6 meter in the site map. And the exterior setback of any building or structure abutting a residential zone is required at 7.5 meters. The diesel pump is located 3 meters from the property line. The required number of parking spaces is 21, but there are 25 spaces included. Are the extra 4 spaces really required? Especially since they are located in the far northeast corner, away from the store and gas island, right by the road access and the house at 513 Paris Road, without a fence. I would like clarification on these concerns, please. In section 4.2, a second traffic analysis was requested and completed on October 20th of 2020 for the intersection, including reporting physical traffic counts. At that time, the province was in a lockdown and people were required to stay at home and even work from home. How accurate would this traffic count be? In section 4.3, it stated the application should have no intolerable impacts on existing properties. I am here as a resident of 644 Oak Park Road to make very clear my family would be negatively impacted by the rezoning and planned development of these two properties. The family at 648 Oak Park Road would be adversely impacted, as well as all other families on Oak Park Road. The many families living along Paris Road would be greatly impacted by these two applications. The official plan may have these properties designated to become general commercial, but right now, and for the past almost 100 years since my home was built, this has been a residential area. Development in this area can take years, so to assume, as stated in the report, that there would be no impact of a gas station at this property is far-reaching and completely incorrect. I'm telling you the impact on our families would be immediate and intolerable. The land use compatibility section in the provincial's policy statement indicates odor, noise, and contaminants should be avoided, as well as minimizing risks to public health and safety. And if avoidance is not possible, then there must be an identified need for the proposed use, that alternative locations have been evaluated, and that there be no alternatives, and that adverse effects to land use be minimized and mitigated. There are 7 Tim Hortons within 6 kilometers. The closest is 1.5 kilometers away. A Starbucks 1.8 kilometers away. 5 gas stations within 7 kilometers. The closest 1.8 kilometers away, with a transport refueling station right beside it. Another gas station and commercial plaza has been proposed just east of 517 Paris Road. What is the reasoning and necessity for another gas station and Tim Hortons on this particular piece of land surrounded by residential properties? I appreciate the opportunity to voice my concerns along with those of my neighbors at this public meeting. I'm asking for all of us that proper consideration, questions and concerns, and planning be taken into consideration before a decision is made on these 2 rezoning applications. I would encourage deciding committee members to come to our neighborhood and see the impact these properties would have on our daily lives. If there is an opportunity for more public comments tonight that were not included in the registered delegations, my husband Sonny and neighbor Lena Wheeler would like to address the committee as well. I'd just like to put a little note. We are not against growth in the area. We are absolutely against a gas station beside our homes. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Okay, Thank you, Cheryl. And you brought up a lot of concerns, and what we're going to do is we're going to hear anybody else from the public, and then we'll go to the applicant to try and address some of them. Okay, so thank you very much. Adam, do we have anyone else from the public here tonight to speak to this application?
Mr. Chair, no, there's no one else registered, but I believe Ms. Waldeck has indicated that there are other members, and they are on the call if they wish to join.
Okay. Is there anyone on the call tonight that wishes to speak to this application?
Yes, I would. It's Lena Wheeler.
Okay, Lena, go ahead anytime you're ready. We can hear you nice and clear.
Most of the stuff I'm going to state is pretty much the same thing that Mrs. Waldeck has mentioned, but I'll just read for what I have, what I've written down. Same with her. I am not against development, but I'm extremely against a gas station being beside my home. I'm going to get emotional, but my property is right beside the diesel load. I won't be able to open my windows. I already have a lot of health issues. I beg that we really consider what we're putting there. I have a cistern that sits in between the property lines. I have 22.9 feet to the property line. I have 2 cisterns sitting there. I don't think it's accounted for how close it is to a water source. That water source is plumbed into my house. I am concerned with health and safety for my family and neighbors due to exposure to odors, vapors, gasoline, diesel fuels. This is extremely dangerous to human life, as noted in my letter. I am concerned by the contaminant that could affect my drinking and bathing water for my well. I have 2 cisterns, like I mentioned, that are plumbed into my home. I'm also concerned with the fact that there's only 32 feet from my bedroom window to that fence line for the diesel load. At that point, a diesel truck is approximately 13 feet tall, and to my window sill is almost 5 feet. I will absolutely have no barrier with that, the fencing that they're requiring. I will not be able to open my windows. We will not be able to open curtains due to the concern of privacy and safety. I would request that if this ever goes through, that the fencing is absolutely changed. The fence has no sound barrier at all that they're requesting. It will not even reduce a conversation between people. There is not much room for transports in that zone area. There's really one room for one transport. What happens to the rest of the transports that are waiting to come in diesel load? Do they wait out front of my house? Where do they go?
Mr. Chair, sorry, but point of order, if I can just, and I hate to interrupt, but it was said earlier that they are taking the diesel pumps out of the equation.
And that's completely confirmed.
That's not in the application at this point.
Right.
So, we'll allow her to speak to it.
In the planning justification report under 4.2 transportation, it states the traffic study was done in October 2020, which was mentioned by Cheryl, that this study was done during a pandemic when the province pretty much was not running. So I agree with that. We need another traffic study done to more current time, and hopefully before we go into another shutdown, hopefully not. This study it was done when there was no travel, no activities, no events. The province was barely running. You also stated that the county anticipates that the intersection of Oak Park Road and Parish Road will need upgrading due to the increase of traffic. It says that right in the report to say that it doesn't need it a year ago, but you are already stating that it will need it. So that means the traffic is expected and it's going to impact my home and all the surrounding areas. So I don't think the traffic study that was done meets the need of now or in the future. You state that, with being said, this traffic study should be redone. 4.3 of the impact proposal development, it states, should not have no tolerable impact on surrounding or adjacent properties. I find this statement to be insulting, hurtful, and grossly inaccurate. It also states through the planning justification report that this falls under the vision of county or the county of Brant official plans. If this is our vision for the future, to put gas stations and heavy industrial development like this beside residential homes, I, for one, are scared for the future of residents in Brant County. And thank you. And Mr. Glover, I don't think it was quite necessary for you to tell me that I should have had to move because you guys wanted a gas station. I think that's inappropriate and inconsiderate.
Okay,
Thanks.
Lena, what, I didn't get your address for the clerk. I'm sorry.
My
It's
house
six-
is 648 Oak Park Road. I'm on the south
Okay.
side of the proposal.
Yes, yeah. Okay, thank you. I forgot to ask that. Okay, Lena, does that conclude your remarks?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I said to Cheryl, we'll get to some of those. I know we'll get to some of those concerns later on. We're just going to hear from anybody else that's here tonight. So, is there anyone else here present at this electronic meeting that wishes to speak to this application?
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, Sonny, go ahead.
Yeah, please. Hi, sorry. My name's Sonny Waldick. I live at 644 Park Road, right beside Lena. The gas stations have spills above ground, below ground. I know Terrence wants to mitigate most of that, and I understand the prerogative from the salesman point of view to mitigate that, but spills above ground, you cannot mitigate. Spills below ground, perhaps, depending on the owner, current state of what's going on. You know, they do sales samples for a reason. It's because they're establishing baselines for contaminations. They don't do them for fun. Gas stations have to have venting. There's no venting shown on the drawing here. They have to have venting because they have to replace or remove the air in the tanks, and you got to deal with thermal expansion. I don't know where they're planning on having these because I couldn't find them in the drawing. That venting is I'm willing to bet is probably going to be on the south side there, close to where they're going to remove the shed, or maybe across the back where they're going to put the septic tanks. Anyhow, regardless, it's very close to housing. There's health issues associated with this stuff. This stuff is not like it's not magical. This is a very old argument. Like everybody knows this. The derelict gas station thing. Everybody's seen one. When these things die, they can't do, this is specifically to the counselors and the planner, not so much the Terrans. When the gas station dies, because it's going to run its cycle of 50 or 80 years, they can't do anything with them because they are contaminated. They leave, it's like an old tanning plant. There's very little you can do with them. Like it's just, I don't know. Let me get back on track here. I have most of my concerns line up with everybody else's. I'm concerned about water. I know Terrence might not be able to sympathize with this, but we live off well water. We prefer well water. We don't have a desire for city water. Our aquifers are all tied together. You guys have a drilled well that you're planning to decommission that's maybe 30 feet at the top end from the existing tanks. I don't care how much bentonite you put in that thing, you're not going to seal it tight. It's in the aquifer system. Like they make, I have reservations about that as well. In the provided package, I have a few things I'd like to mention from the provincial policy statement or the PPS section because I believe they're relevant to this application. Now, this is more for the planning department, and the package was a fairly good package, I thought, but there's a few things I'd like to bring up. On page 86, section 133C, settlement areas, land uses patterns within settlement areas shall be based off densities and a mix of land uses which minimize negative impacts, air qualities, and climate change to promote energy efficiency. Page 87, section 1261, the land use compatibility. The major factors and sensitivities, sensitive land uses shall be planned in development to avoid, or if avoidance is impossible, to minimize and mitigate any potential adverse effects of odor, noise, contaminations, risks to the public health and safety. Page 91. Now, this is all provided to us in the package. Like I didn't have to go hunting for this stuff at all. Like this is what you guys gave me. Page 91, section 2214F, managing growth. Applying the policies of this plan will support the achievements of complete communities that, and this is subsection F, migrate to adapt to climate change impacts, improve resilience, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and contribute to environmental sustainability. This is a gas station. I don't see how it applies to any of those sections. I know the county takes its distance, especially the development side, based off of the plan, the master plan, whatever it's called. And I understand the prerogative, but you guys control what goes into the county to a certain degree. And I know the planners have to lay out whatever in front of the councilors, and councilors have to voice their opinion and carry on. It's just, this is a gas station. As of a few months ago, the federal government said that they're going to ban gasoline sales by 2035, gasoline fueled cars. In my personal opinion, that's a little optimistic and it's pretty aggressive, and there's going to be a lot of infrastructure change required to accommodate that. But this change is coming within our lifetimes. In 15 years, 20 years, maybe 25 years, even if the population of Paris gained by a third, if the gas stations currently aren't like max capacity, when they start making the flip to electric vehicles, this thing's going to be a derelict device sitting on the side of the road. We're going to the electric future here. I know some people have some reservations about it, but it's moving right now. They mention in the plan justification section 6.2 paragraph 2, the bottom quarter, that the development will also help the community of Brant meet the minimum target employment intensification as laid out in the provincial plan. This is a gas station. The gas stations are our primary beef here. You're talking 2 people. I think that's a stretch to reference that myself personally, but you know, back for Terrence. I'm one of the schmucks that didn't move away, I guess. It's not the commercial growth that bothers us. We know it's coming. We know parts of it's coming. It's the gas station that's the primary hang up that everybody doesn't want to touch. That's about it for me. I'm sorry if it's plain. I don't deal with the council stuff much.
No, Sonny, yeah, I thought you spoke well. So thank you very much for coming out this evening. I'll ask if there's anyone else from the public tonight, Adam, that is here that wishes to speak to it, that you're aware of.
I'm not aware of anyone else, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I do know there was a couple neighbors that couldn't be here tonight. They had other commitments, but we did receive all the written submissions. I should point out too that when they were talking about 537, they're speaking of another application that's nearby, just for your information, Terrence, but I think you know about that. Okay, so I'll ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third and final time if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak to this application. Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll close this part of the meeting off to the public. We're going to go back to the applicant. Terrence, there was a few questions. I know we've dealt with some of them, water concern for one, but there was a couple that came up that I thought were pretty good. So I'll let you go ahead and answer what you can. And if I don't check it off on my list, I'm going to bring it up. Okay. So.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate to council, I'm not giving a sales pitch here. I'm speaking as a professional planner, same as your staff, professional planner. We're obligated to give our professional planning opinion what is good planning. So I'm not giving a sales pitch. I don't get anything out of this. I'm getting paid one way or the other. Yeah. I'm providing professional advice. And I'll just go back to some of the notes that I have here. So the question was employment, how much employment we're going to have. With other gas stations and convenience stores and Tim Hortons that I've dealt with in the past, gas station, 6 to 8 employees, perhaps. Tim Hortons, 12 to 14 employees. You got all the shift works and that. The store, 4 employees. So we're looking 22, 25 employees for this site. I mean, which is quite a bit for the size of the site. And I'm not trying to argue, or I'm just stating facts. We're going to remove the diesel fueling station. I heard the concerns of the neighbor abutting it, and I agree with the neighbor's concerns that are abutting it in terms of her perceived quality of life. I don't know if I agree with her assertions or assumptions of chemicals in the air and odors and all that stuff, because there's many gas stations beside residential properties throughout Ontario. This isn't the first one. This just happens to be the first gas station commercial in this area that's causing it. And if we were to move this to another area, then we'd have other residents that would have the same concern. So where along Paris Road in the commercial designated area should we put a gas station that's not going to upset anybody? But what I have committed to is that we will go back with the town staff, the planning staff, and figure out a way to mitigate this development to minimize the impacts of the neighbors. We're not saying we're going to stop pursuing this, because this is a good location. It's every gas station's dream to be here, and it's a viable situation where you're going to have a good viable business in your community, and obviously there's competitive advantages to it as well as been expressed. But we will consider the neighbors' concerns and try to do something a little bit more palatable, to knowing that this is going to be commercial and industrial in the future. But again, this transition that we're concerned with, that the neighbors are concerned with, how do we transition into this? And I've heard on time and time again that people assume that I'm calling them schmucks or something for not moving. I'm not. I've never called anybody a schmuck. I've never said that. What I've said is they had opportunity to mitigate their concerns, and they had not acted on that. Which is, I'm not calling you a schmuck. I'm saying that there's many reasons why you wouldn't have acted. You like where you are. You don't want to move. You feel that this will never happen. I mean, there's so many reasons why. So don't, again, to counsel and everybody, that's not the impression I want to leave with you. The impression is that there was actions that could have been taken that weren't. I think I covered the concerns, because some of the concerns were addressed earlier in my discussion. If I could, through you, Mr. Chair, if there's any questions that were raised that perhaps I forgot or I didn't mention, I'd be happy to talk to them now if you can remind me.
Okay, we're not going to go back to the public. We closed that part off, but I did write some of them down. Where's the venting of the fuel tanks? Where's that vent going to go out?
So it's not sure. We don't have that level of detail yet on the venting, but typically there will be minor venting, and it would probably be in the area of the septic tanks, so away as away from the residents as far as possible.
Okay.
And yeah, well, if that. Again, I'm not the gas station designer per se, the technical designer.
There's talk about house values going down, but I don't believe that's I know in the past people are concerned about that, but it's not a planning matter per se. You got anything you want to share about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, to raise the issue again, if I live next door, I would be concerned about property values. I mean, because if I'm being asked to sell my house to allow for commercial opportunity or something, I want to get the best value for my house. So if you were to sell this property as a residential house, your property values are already diminished because whoever buys this property will or should know that in the future they won't be residential. So that will impact them. But what they do market, and a wisely marketed approach here would be to sell this as a commercial property, which is what it is. Zoned for residential currently, but it will be zoned for commercial in the future. And you'll get the best bang for your buck, in my opinion, to sell it as a commercial property, because that's what it is. I hope that answers the question.
No, like I said, it doesn't.
It's a soft planning issue, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. The convenience store will be exceeding what's in our bylaws, the square meters, the area.
Yeah, so we want to maximize the viability of the business, right? By providing a larger footprint for a convenience store, we can offer not only chips and chocolate bars and lotto tickets, we can start to provide small groceries and household goods and things of a convenience nature, so that the residents in this area don't have to travel all the way into Paris or Brantford to pick up supplies. They can just grab gas, grab it on the way home, whatever they need. You'll see many gas stations that are currently being developed have freezer section. You can buy milk there. You can buy, things that you just need, and that's what the additional floor space is for. If the council decides that they don't want to support this additional floor space, I mean, I think that's something we'd have to work with, but I don't see the logic in that. I mean, the convenience store is not the offending use. The gas, what I'm hearing, is the offending use. But what, if not a gas station here, then where on this road? I mean, you do have two that are existing, but there's not to say you can't have four. If the market demands it, the market demands it. So if it's not this location, we move it down the street for another 100 meters, then we have the same issues with those neighbors. I mean, this whole area, the whole discussion is based on protecting the residential use and protecting the livability of the residential uses, which the official plan says will not be there in the future. So again, I come back to the transition that we're having.
I'm just going through the questions that were raised.
Yep, no, sometimes I get passionate. I apologize. I don't mean.
Excess parking spaces. What's the need for that?
So we always try, we're able to provide excess parking because whether it's electric cars, and this has changed to an electric fuel station or as a liquid fuel station or whatever, or convenience store, it's always better to take cars off the street, to take cars in the neighborhood, and have parking for them. If council decides that they want us to limit parking to only have the required parking, we'll be happy to do that. It's cheaper for my client not to build those parking spaces, but I don't think it will serve the community well. But again, that's for you to decide. We've asked for an increase in parking to benefit everybody, but again, we'd be happy to reduce that.
The height of the fencing, the type of the fencing beside the residence and the property, your property, was that something you'd be willing to look at?
Yeah, so these are the type of mitigation things that I'm going to talk with the town planner about. I think the biggest concern was the fuel trucks and the height of the fuel trucks next to the neighbor, and the fencing wouldn't protect the views, I guess. We've eliminated that diesel fueling area, so that's no longer a concern. It would basically be car lights, etc. And we'll have to look at it, the numbers and that, and see, but we'll put a privacy fence there along the neighbors so that's protected against car lights, etc. But we'll see. There's a form of noise wall. I guess we don't need a noise wall here. It's been proven through our study, but there's board-on-board, tight fit fencing does also act as a noise barrier. So although we don't need a noise barrier and we're not structuring a noise barrier, we can design it to act as a noise barrier. So that's something that we can talk about as well.
Okay, thank you. It was raised twice now, but you didn't seem it was a big concern about toxic, fumes from the gas. They did mention diesel fumes, but if the diesel station is not going in, then I guess that won't be an issue. But you don't feel that there's concern with fumes coming off the gas?
So again, I'm not a doctor. I don't think any of them have suggested they're doctors or scientists for that matter. So these are assumptions that are being made. Again, there's gas stations right next to apartment buildings, right next to single detached houses throughout Ontario. If this was a major concern, the government would be stepping in with regulation to restrict or a buffer between or a separation distance between, similar to MDS, minimum distance separation for agricultural waste and that. They have not done that to my knowledge. And with the way gas stations are designed today, if you had odor leak, that means there's fuel leak, and that means there's possibility for explosions. And that I don't believe they're designed not to do that, obviously. So I think that the residents, although they have perceived concerns, I don't think those are assumptions, not fact.
Well, as I read today, you don't have to be a doctor to know that a headless torso doesn't need, an aspirin. So some things, do kind of make sense. So I didn't know if there was something that could be done to mitigate that, but we'll leave that for another day. The last concern, I'm not looking for an answer, but I thought there was a lot of good points brought up about the traffic count being done during a lockdown. There's also the issue that Highway 2 section, Oak Park Road, serves as the emergency detour route during when the 403 shut down. So there's some valid concerns, you know, about the traffic and all that stuff. So, but like I say, you've talked about it enough. So
If I can add, there was one point of clarification, if I could. The traffic study that we were asked to redo, to add to an addendum to it, there was concern that in 2020, we were in the middle of a pandemic and those figures of the numbers would not be accurate. Our traffic consultant was asked to look at another site in Brantford, which would give comparable numbers at time of full service. So the number, as I understand it, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but as I understand it, we've mitigated that by taking numbers from a higher populated, higher denser area to offset those numbers of the pandemic to give accurate and if anything, I think projected numbers for this area for the traffic study. And I would encourage you to talk to your traffic staff. I'm not a traffic engineer, but they would know better than I as to how we've mitigated or how we met their requirements prior to suggesting or moving forward with a peer review. If you want a peer review, that's totally your call, but I'd ask you to speak to them because I'd hate to see you ask for peer review to answer the questions that have already been answered.
Yeah, fair enough. So, okay, Terrence, I appreciate the answers. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring it back to the committee, and I'm going to ask the committee if I can get a motion on the floor to proceed for information. Moved by Mayor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Wheat. Is there any questions or comments or anything else anybody wants to share? Councillor LaFerriere, go ahead.
Yeah, just some comments. Just to note for those on the line that this is just being received, not approved at this time. When the speaker, the planner talked about where, you know, I mean, we did talk about Dundas Street being a better fit for a gas station. And I think part of the reason, just to clarify, something I've seen with the community is, I think part of the reason that folks didn't act on this is in part because folks erroneously believe that they won this in 2017. There's a big gap between 2017 and the initial push for this and 2021. And I know some of that's probably because of COVID, but I think some of that's also was miscommunicated to folks. They believed literally that some people believed there was a referendum on this. Some people believed that there was a vote in a room one day. Some people, I think, may have been told by folks in the room at the time, we won, right? And they took that and they think that it was gone, not just paused. So I do think that's where some of this is coming from. And I do want to start off in my comments with the positive. I see a willingness to explore more mitigation. I see the elimination of the truck and diesel fueling as a positive. And actually, ironically, having more parking spots than required is something we normally beg developers to do. So that they've come to us with that, I think is a positive. But I do think that traffic second opinion peer review is needed, even within the conversation tonight between our staff, the applicant's planner, and Brantford planners just down the street. There's all different ideas about the need for a traffic light, where it should be, if it should be, when it should be, if it should ever be installed. For me, that's enough to suggest, combined with the recent increases in traffic and speeding, an updated county and city traffic master plans, the validity of a peer review is there. We also have 6 months now, I think, of speed and volume data from that stretch where we had the speed signs right there. And that's been more recently and not during a fully enforced stay-at-home order. On the health issues, 1981, 1986, 92, 95, 2003, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16, 2018, 2019. There's lots of scientific data about things like childhood cancer rates, adult cancer rates, respiratory problems, asthma, other health effects of having gas stations really close to homes. Issues, and not just about explosions, but issues of fumes, groundwater hazards, minor ground leaks that build, exposure hazards, ozone pollution, carbon monoxide levels, hydrocarbon fumes, benzene releasing into the air. And I say this not as a counselor, I say this as a person whose father owned 4 gas stations. I worked in 5 different gas stations in my life. And I've seen those spells, and none of them were as close to residential areas as what's being talked about today, or close to residences, I should say. And I also just caution, I see a long spell on this one. I see potential for lawsuits. I see pleas to environmental organizations and pleas from residents to upper levels of government. It's kind of a mess in my opinion. I don't think it's clean and easy. I don't think that means we're closed for business. I don't think that means we're necessarily open for it all the time either, but if the developer goes to the province and gets this, we may lose some mitigation factors. If that does happen, if this is approved, I advise folks that are on the call to hear Terrence out about the selling as a commercial property. And I would maybe say that if that was to happen, future council should consider maybe leniency in looking at things like fee and applications for fees to rezone from residential owners. And man, that's a lot of complication for a gas station at Tim Hortons and maybe a banana stand with some milk. But I have concerns, and I think residents do too, but not about everything with this, but specifically that gas station, I think, has come up as the biggest problem for folks on this. So just thanks for letting me speak to it.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I hear it causes hair loss as well, but that's just rumor. So any other comments or questions from committee members? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Terence did say, if we don't put a gas station here, where would we put one? Well, we've already agreed as a council that there would be a location not more than 500 meters down the road on Paris Road. So it's not out of the question to have a gas bar, but not on that street. It's quite feasible.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. Any other comments, questions, opinions from the committee? Oh, seeing none. Okay, I'll call the vote to receive for information. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so Terence, just for your edification, again, this is just, I think, an information session. This will go back to the planner. He will continue to work with you. Hopefully, we can get something that's a little more acceptable to everybody involved. So I thank you for coming out tonight. You made some fairly caustic and, as you said, inflammatory comments. And I'll be honest with you, I appreciate you not sugarcoating it and telling it like it is. So thank you again for coming out. And I thank all the members of the public for coming out. Okay.
Very much.
And we are going to continue because we must. And we are going to section 9, public hearings under the Planning Act to consider staff recommendations. So there are, I believe, there were 4 items. So one was deferred. So we have 3 to make a decision on tonight. And the first one is 9.1, report 21-208, ZBA 421. This is from Amanda. And this is, again, this is for 539 Paris Road, of which it was mentioned earlier. So Amanda, take it away. I can see the screen now. You're sharing.
Perfect. Thank you for confirming that. So thank you through the chair. An application for a rezoning has been received from David Rowe on behalf of numbered company 2707130 Ontario Inc. In regards to the location, the subject lands are located near the intersection of Paris Road and Oak Park Road and are irregular in shape. The subject lands has a frontage of approximately 32.7 meters along Paris Road, in an area of approximately 4.8 hectares. Through the rezoning application, the applicant is proposing 3 distinct uses with the intention of severing each lot through a future committee of adjustment application. Lot number 1, which is generally located in the northwest portion of the subject lands along Paris Road, is proposing a multi-unit industrial plaza. The intent of this plaza is to provide a storefront to various industrial users such as heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and similar contractors and industrial suppliers. Lot number 2 is generally located in the northeast portion of the subject lands with frontage along Paris Road. Lot number 2 contains the existing dwelling and accessory structure, and it's my understanding the applicant is seeking to build an addition to the existing dwelling to facilitate a studio workshop with a maximum of 5 bedrooms for overnight accommodation. And lot number 3 is generally located in the southern portion of the subject lands. It does not have frontage along Paris Road, rather it has frontage along Oak Park Road. It is my understanding the applicant is proposing a cold storage warehouse with 11 units and is seeking a reduced street setback of 30 meters. And in terms of the official plan, the subject lands are designated as employment and are located within site-specific policy area 16. The subject lands are also located within the primary urban settlement area of Paris. As the subject lands are designated as employment, a variety of industrial uses are permitted, including heavy employment. It is my opinion the proposed uses, those being the industrial plaza, studio workshop, and cold storage warehouse, are permitted on lands designated as an employment. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently split zoned agricultural and heavy industrial. So just on the presentation, I have the first map here is the current zoning, and the second map is the proposed zoning, just for visual representation, just because there's a few different terms on here. And then based on my understanding, the subject lands have maintained the current zoning since the 2001 zoning bylaw. And then due to the uses being sought, each distinct use is being proposed to be rezoned with the site-specific provision. is my opinion, the 3 separate site-specific provisions are appropriate rather than one. That way the location of the proposed uses are specific to their intent and they're controlled. Lot number 1 is not seeking relief. Rather, they are proposing a new use and definition for a service supply shop to facilitate the industrial plaza. Lot number 2 is also not seeking relief. Rather, they are proposing a new use and definition for the studio workshop. And lot number 3 is seeking relief from the zoning bylaw in terms of the street setback, whereas the cold storage warehouse is a permitted use. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 50 meters, whereas the applicant is proposing 30. It is my opinion the proposed uses and relief are appropriate and maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw. It is my opinion the proposed heavy industrial rezoning with site-specific provisions is more appropriate than other employment zones such as prestige or light industrial, as the heavy industrial development standards are increased and require greater setbacks from abutting properties, rear yards, and street setbacks. And then in regards to my recommendation, I am recommending approval of the proposed rezoning. It is my opinion the proposed rezoning complies with provincial policy and maintains the intent of municipal policy. And then through public circulation, comments from surrounding properties were received with concerns regarding traffic, noise, and lighting. And then I also note the subject lands are subject to site plan control where additional information such as landscaping, lighting, drawings are required. That way staff can ensure there are no negative impacts on the surrounding properties. And the applicant was also required to submit a traffic impact study through the rezoning, which was reviewed both by the County of Brant and the City of Brantford, which both agreed with the general conclusions of the report. And then in conclusion, I am recommending approval of this application, and I would be happy to answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions for our planner at this time? Okay, we'll start with Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Amanda. Amanda, I was wondering if you could help me understand a couple of things or help me visualize a couple of things. When I hear the words heavy industrial, I picture big factories and smokestacks and those types of things. I don't picture cold storage for ice cream and chocolate and quilting shops and so it's noteworthy, and you touched on it in your presentation that this applicant is going for heavy industrial and not light industrial. And I was wondering if you could spend a little bit more time on the rationale behind that, whether that delivers advantages to us in terms of distances away from the neighbors and things like that. So that's my first question. My second question is, we've talked earlier tonight on other applications about mitigation strategies, and if this application is approved, it will be subject to site plan approvals, but then the residents who will have concerns about some of this aren't involved in that process, and they don't necessarily see the details of that. I'm just wondering, as a planner, if you could help everyone visualize some of the things that might be done through the site plan approval process to help bring some peace of mind to the neighbors who right now look at a cornfield and don't necessarily want to look at an industrial plaza. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So I'm just going to touch on site plan first, and then I'll address your original first question, which is just the light versus the heavy industrial zoning. So in regards to site plan, it is what I would refer to as a detailed engineering review and a detailed planning review. So right now, the drawing that was presented in the presentation is conceptual nature. Through the detailed engineering review, through site plan control, we will do that detailed review to make sure there's no negative impacts on the surrounding properties. And if there are, how can we mitigate those? And typical mitigation measures would be landscaping, potentially, and increase large shrubbery, potentially a fence. And maybe adjusting where entrances are on a site to address certain concerns. So through site plan control, we look at those mitigation measures. And then in regards to the public being involved in the site plan control, you are correct. It is not a public process, just because staff do have delegated authority for site plan control. But before we would, for lack of a better term, sign off on a site plan application, we do make sure that all the commenting agencies have no concerns with the application, whether it be utility companies, engineering, the fire department, the planning department. We make sure everything is in compliance. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
While you're catching the train back, I'm gonna quickly just jump in, and if it's okay with Mr. Chair, just to say, so tonight the public might hear a decision on this application. If it happens to be an approval, then it goes into a process that neither the public nor this committee ever see again until it, I guess, comes to council. That's, I guess I'm just, I can empathize with anyone from the neighboring area that might struggle with the fact that the next time they see it is when it gets built.
Mm-hmm. Yep, through the chair. So site plan control would be after the rezoning application, which is what we're currently discussing. The purpose of the rezoning application is just to establish the 2 additional permitted uses, which would be that which would be the studio workshop with overnight accommodation and the industrial plaza. The cold storage warehouse, it is a permitted use on the subject lands as of right now. And then if, let's say it is approved and let's say it goes through the site plan control process and it is finalized and signed off and they do receive building permits and everything is done. And if there are concerns with lighting or noise, the county does have overarching bylaws that control that. So if there is noise or lighting trespass onto the surrounding properties, our bylaw department is able to enforce that and rectify that situation.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then in regards to your first question, just in regards to the zoning, whether an M3 versus an M2, the light industrial, it's my opinion that the heavy industrial is more appropriate because there are increased requirements. So for example, the street setback for the light industrial, the M2 zone, is only 6 meters. Whereas since this property is fronting Paris Road and Oak Park, the requirement is the 50 meters. So for example, that one is increased. The rear yard setback is increased as well. And so the lot frontage is also a greater requirement compared to the M3, which is the heavy industrial, to the M2. And I do know the subject lands currently, the eastern portion of the subject lands is currently already zoned that heavy industrial M3, and properties to the south is M3 and further properties to the east are M3 as well. So it's be a consistent zoning for this area.
Okay, thank you. And just through Mr. Chair, so while, and this really simplifies it, but bear with me. So while heavy industrial sounds scarier and less appealing, there are actually elements to the heavy industrial that make it more appealing because it pushes things back away from the road.
That's correct. There are, through the chair, there are increased development standards in the 11.2.1 zone requirement standards that speak to zoning requirements for a property that is zoned heavy industrial versus like a prestige industrial or a light industrial. There are increased requirements.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Amanda.
I just clarified too for Councillor House and anyone that's not aware, we have delegated site plan approval to staff, but at the same time, we've also left it in our ability as individual councillors. If we wish to be involved in that process, we can ask for what we call the bump up. I think you've heard of that expression. So you ask that if anybody can request it, it's not a motion. You just ask for a site plan to be bumped up. At that point, we would actually get a chance as a council to look at it and either approve it or ask for changes. So just so you're aware of that, Councillor House. Because there's sometimes you want to be involved a little more in a site plan than usual, you know. So if there's something if it's something you want, think about it and just you make that request. Okay, I seen that Councillor Ferrier, you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Councillor Gavard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question is going to be, and I want the bump up. I'll just state it now. My question is going to be about the M3 and the M2, and maybe I can just express the concern I have and see if there can be some color or commentary on that, because I understand the advantage with the more stringency for this plan. I'm actually okay with the plan as it is. If I vote for this or against this, it's not about necessarily the plan itself that I see before me. But is there not a disadvantage in the M3 in that, you know, they're asking for an M3, a heavy industrial use zoning, which has more requirements, but they're also asking for some setback reductions. But could they not ask for an M2 and do the same thing and have some setback reductions or increases or movement the other way? Like could we not do it the other way? Because my issue again is not what's being proposed, but my worry is, yes, there's the benefit of the increased requirements, but in my mind, there's an increased risk in the future, and not from this owner necessarily or this developer, but of this becoming, it'll have the zoning for nobody's going to go back. Nobody's going to say, well, actually, what we really want is an M2. So my worry is that real heavy industrial comes in and could come in the next time this changes hands, if it ever changes hands. So again, my issue, I want to be diplomatic with this, is not with what's being proposed. It's the fear of a bait and switch in the future, and not necessarily from this developer. Are my worries justified there? Is that impossible? Is that possible? Can you just maybe provide some color on that?
Yeah, so I can confirm that the proposed cold storage warehouse would be viewed as a warehouse in our definition. And it is a permitted use in the M2 and the M3 zone, so the light industrial and the heavy industrial. In my opinion, it's more appropriate it goes through that M3 zone because it's already an existing zoning. It's consistent with other properties in the surrounding area. And again, in those increased development standards, it's more appropriate in my opinion. In regards to the M2 zone, so the light industrial, the street setback would only be 6 meters, where right now we are requiring the 50 and they're seeking that relief for 30. So it would, if we went with that M2, in theory, that portion of the property could proceed straight through site plan control. And whereas right now we have the ability to impose that 30-meter setback on the property and set it a little bit further back from those residences along Oak Park Avenue.
But if it is zoned 3, Mr. Chair, if it is zoned M3 in the future, another owner could come and put a bunch of other uses on it, or even this owner, if they so choose. Like, there's nothing preventing that. Is that correct?
Thank you through the chair. If the applicant were to change their mind or changed ownership, there is the potential for that to happen. But there is the potential for that to happen in many properties across the county and many applications as well.
Yeah, maybe the applicant can speak to that a little bit too. So I don't have to ask the question again. Thank you.
Councilor Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Amanda. The 30-foot setback that's being proposed for the warehouse, they want it reduced from, did you say 60 to 30?
50 meters to 30 meters.
50 to 30, okay. And the average transport truck that would be coming into this warehouse to deliver or pick up goods is approximately 70 to 80 feet long.
Through the chair, I can't confirm the average length of the transport truck. In that kind of aspect, I would defer to our engineering department and our operations department, which both provided comments and agreed with the general conclusions of the traffic impact study and have had a preliminary review of the site plan. And so has the city of Brantford, and neither of the departments or the city were opposed to the application. So in that kind of aspect, I would defer to them because that's more of their expertise.
I see. Well, I guess I'm concerned about where this reduction is from on the plan. Is it from the closest building to the highway, to Paris Road, where the single storage unit is on the diagram? Is that where the 30 meters is?
Sorry.
Or are we talking at the driveway?
Thank you through the chair. So it's my understanding that 30-meter setback would be from the corner of the most northern east corner. I'll share my screen and that might be a little easier, to the property line. I'm just pulling up.
Okay, so that would be the,
Sorry, just let me know if you can see it.
this corner here.
Yeah, so the 30-meter setback would be from this corner to the property line. So most of the, as you can see, and just based on this conceptual plan, a lot of the structures are actually maintaining or actually have a greater setback than that 30 meters.
Okay, I was concerned, and I see where the driveway entrance is. I didn't want trucks being backed up onto Oak Park Road. And so I guess it seems like that's far enough away that it shouldn't cause an issue with traffic on site. And I'm sure the applicant can assure us or reassure us of that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Amanda at this time? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Amanda. In the previous discussion, I think I heard one of the residents say that the exit from the cold storage unit would be directly opposite a residence. Would it be possible to relocate the entrance to the cold storage unit so that it wasn't directly opposite a residence and was actually further away from the residential development?
So thank you through the chair. There is the potential for that. That is something we can definitely take a look at through the site plan control process and determine if there is the potential to potentially shift the entrance further south on Oak Park Road to try to limit the proximity to those residential uses.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Amanda? Yeah, just I think Bob will speak to it, but yeah, just regarding the entranceway, I appreciate what Councillor Bell says. It was in one of the letters, and I was on site. We've seen it. It's going to go right across, but I understand you can't go within 30 meters of a railroad crossing. I know we got the stormwater management pond, so not sure if that's an issue. So I will ask the applicant or the agent thereof if they could come up and present. And I believe it's you, Bob.
Actually, I think it's David Rowe. He'll be making the presentation.
You know, you're right. You're right. My apologies. There you are, Dave.
There I am. Yes, thanks. Yes, really here, I guess, to answer questions and concerns. And I gathered from the earlier presentation, being as it's right in the neighborhood and this property, concerns regarding traffic and location of entrances, all of that type of thing. And that's where, as a planner, I fall back on the traffic consultants, as well as reviews by your engineering department and the like, to best locate the location of the entrances so as to mitigate traffic congestion and potential hazards on the road. I know there were concerns regarding noise, lighting, things like that. Again, they can be addressed through the site plan approval process. And I think if you look at, again, concerns relating to industrial uses, that this property is designated as employment. And what I would say in terms of the proposed uses relative to adjacent residential properties on the north side of Paris Road and also on the other road, the uses themselves probably are far less in terms of potential negative impacts than many of the other uses permitted in the zone. When we look at the industrial plaza, we're talking basically for contractors, offices and businesses. We're proposing any outside storage to be behind the building, to be removed from the visual impact of the neighbors to the north. where there would be lighting plans required again and with the additional setbacks, I don't really see that as being a major concern. The cold storage, again, warehousing is, in terms of impacts, far less likely to have negative impacts than almost any other manufacturing type of uses. So again, from that perspective, with the fact that there are residential properties in this area, the proposed uses in this case, I think, are far less in terms of potential negative impacts. Yes, it is difficult to know what the future could be. However, I would say once we have warehousing on the property, the likelihood of that being converted to some other more noxious industrial use is probably quite limited. Again, the amount of traffic that we have today and the amount of traffic that's likely to occur in the future along Paris Road and just the location of this property is going to create a lot of traffic, not from us so much, but just traffic going into and through this area. As far as site plan review, having worked, been in planning, I guess I figured it out the other day at 47 years, I guess. I don't know enough to quit, but 30 years of which I worked for municipalities. I've had councils that wanted to actively participate in site plan review, and what I tended to do is invite them to sit in on our meetings when we review them. Likewise, you wind up, if it's in a public forum, getting into great discussions about which species of trees should be planted where, and I don't think you want to get down to that level. But again, that's up to council, and I'm sure decide what the best alternative is that way. As far as the existing zoning, most of the property is zoned M3, and we went along with that basically because that whole area, employment area, is zoned M3. So we just went with what was there, albeit the uses that we're proposing are not as heavy as many of the other uses within the zone. So we didn't really consider an M2 or an M3 zone simply because most of the property is already zoned M3. We just went with it to be consistent with what was there. If there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer.
Okay, thank you, David. Yeah, I'll open this up to the committee members if they wish to ask Mr. Rowe, Planner Emeritus, any questions on this application? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so you did a good explanation.
Councillor Howes has a hand up. He might not be on your screen.
Oh, he's frozen in time.
Okay, I saw the hand. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so you already have M3 zoning for the area where the cold storage is being proposed. One of the things I wanted to try and clarify is I made a little bit of a joke earlier about you mentioned that chocolate and ice cream are two of the things that might be stored in this place. I presume that access to cold storage facilities might be a benefit to some of our agricultural businesses within our community. So I can see where this would be good for that part of the county. One of the questions that I know has come up in just speaking with residents is cold storage a 24/7 trucks in and out kind of thing, just so we all have a correct vision in mind of what's happening?
My understanding is that it isn't. That there is scheduled hours of operation, but and perhaps my client can answer better if he's online. But my understanding is that there's not a significant amount of traffic in and out on a daily basis.
Okay.
That is at least my understanding of it. Yes.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Rowe at this time? Okay, I don't see any hands up. I will reiterate what David said earlier about sitting in a meeting and going over site plan, because I've been involved in that a couple times, and yeah, it's a lot more constructive than a formal public meeting. I'll tell you, because you can have a lot more dialogue that way. So I do appreciate that comment. Okay, if I don't see any hands up, then I will go to the public at this point. I'll open up to the public and I'll ask our clerk, is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this particular application?
Hi, Mr. Chair. I have Steve and Michelle Kopp registered, but obviously if there are any other members of the public here.
Okay, are they present?
Morning. Good afternoon. Steve Kopp is on.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Steve. Thank you.
Okay, I'll kind of start at the top. I've taken a lot of notes as the meetings went on. I listened to the proposal up the road and whatnot. I listened to the start of this one, and first thing I want to start with is this M2, M3. If we don't require M3, why would we want to rezone it to M3? It leaves us open, I believe, down the road for something bigger and more intrusive to move in. So I really would like that to be considered. Amanda brought up that there would be no impact to the neighboring properties. I'd like to know what that exactly means. Somebody explain that to me.
Sorry, Steve, we'll get to the questions later. Just go through them all. I'm going to make notes.
No problem. Mark stated earlier that Paris Road is a high traffic, high speed road. I would agree with that. They have slowed. I live directly across from where the industrial plaza is going to go. And I just, yeah, it's 548 Paris Road is the address. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was going to ask you at the end. 548 Paris Road. Go on.
So we're right across from the proposed industrial plaza. I do have a concern about the traffic on the road. I've exited from the 403 and Oak Park Road to Paris Road for probably 20 years. And it is an absolute horrible thing late in the afternoon to try and get onto Paris Road. We have traffic issues out here now. We've reduced the speed limit from 80 to 60 probably about a year ago. People still come by here awfully quickly, but that's neither here nor there. But the problem is, you talk about these traffic studies. Have we done the traffic study considering both proposals or just one proposal here and one proposal there? Have we put it all together and said this is going to work? Because I am very concerned about it. I mean, I think there's other ways around this too to protect the residential. I was very offended earlier when a gentleman talked about that we should have moved or whatnot. I was married on this property. I've had 2 children married out here. My wife runs a little business, and we have no intent of going anywhere. There's a piece of property behind us for sale that's like 100 acres and is scheduled for residential. So are we phasing out the residential or are we keeping the residential? Like, what is the plan? I guess that's my concern with traffic and what's going to happen in the neighborhood. Agriculture. We talked about agriculture and how important it is to Brant County. This is agriculture land out here. I love the idea that they're going to have this quilting thing and whatnot up the road. I don't see an issue with that. But do we really want to add more exits onto Paris Road? I mean, we got to think about that. What are we doing here? Like 2 years ago, there were people stopping out here to pet the horses and enjoy the country. I'm concerned with what it's going to be and what I'm going to look at as well. I mean, do we need to exit out here? Can we get everything to go on to Oak Park Road back towards the tracks? I mean, there's houses on Oak Park too, and I don't want to hurt those people. I'm worried about the gas station going in up the road as well. But what else?
What to say?
I don't know. I don't think I have a lot else than that, other than the traffic is probably the main one. And I'm concerned about residential coming together with industrial. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you, Steve. We'll just go through the public comments, and then we'll try and address some of these concerns tonight. I'm not saying we'll get them all, but we'll try our best. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
I would like to, Councillor Miller, Cheryl
Yep.
Waldick.
Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
If I could.
And we got your address from before, so go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for including me in the delegations tonight for the recommendation to approve the application of rezoning 539 Paris Road from agricultural to one parcel being heavy industrial M3-27 and two parcels from heavy industrial M3 to provisions M328, M329. I live on Oak Park Road, directly across from the parcel of land of 539 Paris Road that is proposing to build an 11-unit cold storage facility along with an industrial plaza and a studio workshop with overnight accommodations. I'm very concerned about the impact of cold storage warehouse and the road access just in front of my home and that of my neighbor. The adjoining roads of Paris Road and Oak Park Road are plagued by heavy traffic and accidents. This intersection has seen a number of accidents in recent years and congestion keeps increasing. The proposed entrance and exit for this facility is almost directly across from the property of 517 Paris Road that is seeking to be rezoned to occupy a gas station with a convenience store and a Tim Hortons drive-through. Transport trucks will be entering and exiting this facility and that of the property across the road into an 80-kilometer-an-hour speed zone just meters away from this intersection. The expected increase of transport truck traffic and vehicle traffic at both of these properties is very concerning, along with constant noise and lights directly across from our homes. The school bus stops in this exact location and we have had 3 instances of drivers passing the school bus while the kids were crossing the road. Drivers turn from Paris Road onto Oak Park Road and instantly the speed limit increases to 80 kilometers an hour. Drivers frequently pass vehicles before they get to the train tracks, which is just located seconds down the road. Between the daily traffic at this intersection, Oak Park Road being an emergency detour road and traffic being backed up for 2+ hours on this road, if there's a problem on Highway 403, the difficulty using our driveways, mail delivery being suspended on Paris Road for being unsafe, and the entrance of both proposed developments on these 2 properties, I am very concerned with this proposal and ask that it not be approved. I'm also asking that the cold storage facility on lot number 3 conform with the County of Brant bylaw zone requirements for an M3 property and that a reduced street setback of 30 meters not be approved. The setback requirement states any M3 property that abuts a residential zone or an arterial or collector road that the minimum setback of any building from the lot line be a minimum of 50 meters. The addition of many transport trucks using this road access in this already busy intersection across from residential homes will be impactful on many levels. I have a couple quick questions. I'm just wondering, when was the traffic study completed? Was it at this most recent time? And is that during the lockdown when people were not leaving their homes as well? And I just want to make a note, if the entrance for the cold storage facility moves down further south on Oak Park Road, there's other houses down between my house and the train tracks as well. So they'll be impacted if it moved down a little bit farther down Oak Park Road. So I guess I appreciate the opportunity again to voice my opinions and concerns about these 2 applications. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that. Okay, so I just made a note of your questions, and as you know, we'll see if anybody else has any before we circle around, okay, to those. So thanks, Cheryl. Is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak to this application?
It's Lena Wheeler again.
Okay,
I would
Lena,
like
go
to
ahead.
speak for this. Hi.
And again, we
I'll
got
try
your
not to
address
get
from
too
the-
emotional this time. Um,
You do what you do, Lena. That's
yeah,
fine.
I live at 648 Oak Park Road. My concerns are pretty much the same things that Cheryl was mentioning. My concern is obviously the exiting of trucks coming out of the exit and entrance. I'm not, the plan is very vague. It's kind of really hard to determine exactly where that is. It looks to be like it's across from my home, but I can't 100% define that. I would like to know kind of exactly where that entrance and exit is. With transports that already exist on our road, coming down the road, we have a lot of issues with air brakes and vibration and noise that we already deal with. With the access of who knows how many more trucks coming down here in that increased noise, vibration, light infiltration into my home from headlights coming out of the facility. I'm worried about lighting, even just lighting from the building. What magnitude of lighting is there for that? Is there what they're doing to stop that infiltration into the homes? Same question, is it 24 hours? And noise, odor, dust, lighting, vibration that the facility will cause. If I haven't found any reports on that to know exactly what is happening. And I know that the planner had mentioned that she wanted the traffic study done again, but I don't know if we have access to the noise study and the light study, and if we can get exactly where that entrance and exit is on Oak Park Road so that we can kind of determine how much it does affect the residents. That's pretty much all I have concerns with on that.
Okay, thank you, Lena. I'll see if, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak to this application? Okay, I don't hear anyone piping up, so I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Okay, hearing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'm going to ask, well, maybe Amanda and the applicant's agent, Mr. Rowe, they can kind of help us out with some of the questions. So, David, I'll look to you first. Again, a question was raised, the M2 to M3. I think you answered that. Could you just answer that one more time? What's the purpose of going from M2 to M3?
Yeah, I recall the existing property, much of the property is already M3. And when we made the application and the discussions with county staff, as the entire area is pretty much all M3, that it just seemed logical to not look at the area we already had zoned and just look at the A zone, the lands that are zoned agriculture, and then bring those lands under a similar zoning. We're more focused on the proposed uses and than we were specifically the zoning. Perhaps Amanda can add to that.
Amanda, do you want to share anything on that? I know we talked about it, but this is a question that come up during the public.
Did we lose Amanda?
I could actually jump in on this one, and it's kind of a good discussion point. Through the chair to, and maybe I'll pose this question to Dave as well. Having it be M2 with all the permissions for setbacks and the permissions for the things they want, I think that would also work for planning staff. But as Dave mentioned, there is a large portion of the site that is already zoned for M3. Not sure if the applicant would entertain the idea of having it zoned the entire site M2, again with permissions for setback and for exactly what they want to do. But that's something that we would entertain as well.
Yeah, David, any response to the Matt's?
Yeah.
comments?
Yeah, again, I think I'd like to sit down with my client, take a look at the zones, and I can't obviously say off the top of my head, but I think we could look at that if that was the desire, and again, in discussions with county planning staff as well.
Okay. All right. Well, okay, we'll leave that. Thank you. I know one of the members from the public said, we're taking agricultural land, we're building on it, we're losing good agricultural land, and we hear this discussion, I think, as members of this committee quite a bit. For the public's edification, I mean, we do have an official plan. Certain areas of the county are designated residential, certain areas are designated employment. And just because there's a field of corn there now, somewhere down the road, we're going to use it for residential or we're going to use it for employment. And these lands in the official plan are designated exactly that, employment. So we're not, I guess, taking agricultural land out of production. This was planned for many years now through various official plans. So like I say, we hear that a lot, and I just wanted to address that. Amanda, this one's for you. I think you're the one that said that. It's a quote. It said, "No impact to neighbors." And the question was, what does this mean? Now, I'm going to let you answer that. I have some thoughts on it, but did you want to try and address that?
I can. Thank you, through the chair. So when I had mentioned in my presentation, my answers, no impact, I meant that in no negative impact to the surrounding properties. And we would ensure that there was no negative impact to the surrounding properties through that detailed review process in site plan control.
Okay. Or we try and minimize it. I think I don't know if you could ever get to zero. It's like safety. You can never quite get everything perfectly safe, but yeah, we try and minimize as much as possible. The question raised by one of the members of the public, when was that traffic study done for this application? Was it done at the same time as the other one?
No, so the traffic study for this application is dated June 2021. So it was performed this summer.
Okay. Were there any studies done on noise or light study or light? Any light studies?
So through the rezoning application, through the chair, and through the rezoning application, a noise study and a lighting was not performed, but those are typically done through, in my experience, through the site plan control.
Okay. A question was raised, and I know we talked about it prior to going to the public, about moving the exit so that when the trucks come out, they're not shining their lights directly on houses. But if you move it a little bit south, you've got more residences there. And if you move it too far south, I know you're butting up against maybe that 30-meter setback that CN Rail has. David, can you talk a little bit about this exit for the trucks and how we can not affect residential driveways on Oak Park?
Yeah, what I guess I would suggest is that we look to the traffic engineers as well as the county engineering people to determine the safest location for access, and then at the same time look at what will be right opposite the road, across the road from where those entrances are located, so as to mitigate light. The idea of the headlights at night shining directly onto the whatever residences there are across the road. So again, we would fall into the site plan approval process to come up with, first of all, the safest locations for a new entrance, but also look at additional things such as the impact on whatever it is that's across the road from that entrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought I'd add, I believe there's an opportunity to relocate that entrance onto Oak Park Road and meet all the traffic requirements, and we'll certainly look into that.
Okay, thank you,
as
Bill.
part of the site plan approval process.
Okay, but I believe, David, you said too that the volume of traffic, the volume of truck traffic is not excessive for this cold storage.
Yeah, that's what I have been told by my client, that it's certainly much less traffic than what you get from typical highway commercial uses, and that they do have controls relative to the amount of trucks coming and going on any given day. But again, my client would have more detailed information, and that's perhaps something we can discuss as part of the site plan approval.
Okay, thank you. And then here's another last question I've got written down. They talk about, and obviously it's come up many times, this is traffic. We've done a traffic study. This one was done June. The last one was done October 2020 for 517 Paris Road proposal. And the question was, does the traffic study account for all the developments? I know the one applicant was saying, how tough it is to get onto Paris Road from his address. So again, when we've got, I know we've got the transportation master plan going on, but it doesn't, I don't know if it drills down. It doesn't drill down to the specific planning applications. But when we do a study on the one application, do we account, or do we take into account another application? And I don't know who would best be able to kind of help us with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take that one on. In this particular case, the traffic consultant was actually selected in conjunction with another property owner to the north to kind of merge all the traffic volumes together to get a comprehensive review. That was requested by the county. And this was also the same consultant that actually worked on 517 Paris Road, so that all that information was amassed into a single report. And certainly that'll be revisited during the site plan approval phase. Although this particular report was also accepted by both the city and the county.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Yeah, no, I seen the same name on the traffic study, so I thought, well, okay, maybe that's a good thing. So, okay, I think that I'll ask David or Amanda, was there any other questions that you guys wrote down that I missed that maybe haven't been addressed before we turn it over to the committee for deliberations?
No, I don't think there was. I think we've answered the questions that were raised. Thanks.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, so we have an application or a recommendation before us, and I'm just going to get to it. Where are we at here? Sorry. So I'm going to ask the committee how they want to deal with this recommendation before us. Keeping in mind it can be modified if we so see fit. So I'll go to Councillor Week. Go ahead, John.
I'll move the recommendation as printed.
As printed. Fair enough. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Bell. You're seconding that, Councillor Bell? Okay. You're mute. Okay, that's before us. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Pierce. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't support that because we've had discussion about potentially changing the zoning to an M2. So I would like that discussion to be finalized and have them come back with a decision of what they would like to do before I can vote on this. I think that's only fair to do that. If we vote on this as an M3, then it's all for not them having that discussion.
Okay. And Councillor Ferrier, were you going to say basically the same thing? Not putting words in your mouth, but
no, not exactly. I agree with Councillor Pierce, but no, I was going to say something a little different, if that's okay.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to tell me. So, several meetings ago, we received a request from another municipality to change our speed limit on some specific streets for uniformity, for safety, and we did, if I recall correctly. The folks coming to us today, and maybe even the applicants, remind me that maybe we should be doing the same with Brantford and asking them to reduce some of their section of Paris Road to 60 kilometers for uniformity, safety, for sort of joint. That might take some of the sting out of this, is why I'm bringing this up now. And I think we've also seen tonight in this application and the other many reasons why we should also be asking Brantford and Ernest to join us in some joint transportation master planning. I know we've earmarked the funds since before this term of council, previous term did that. I think that'd be good for all of us for making some of these planning decisions in the future. All that said, my worries about the M3 and the M2 remain. I understand the reasons why. I even empathize with them. But I don't know, like Councillor Pierce said, if I can vote for this, despite liking the usage in the general plan. And I know it's more of a philosophical reason why, but and no matter what happens tonight, either way, I am officially requesting that the site plan approval part of this be bumped up for council. I do think that'll help.
So noted.
With especially when we're looking at things like entrances and, you know, if we remove one cold storage unit, does that make this a way better, more feasible traffic piece? I don't know, but that's something that we can talk about at that site specific piece if this does get approved tonight.
Okay, as far as the speed limit goes, we obviously it's not, we wouldn't do that at planning, but you know, I think the appropriate committee to take that too. Hold on to that M2, M3 thought, because we will come back to that. I see, Councilor Gower, did you have your hand up?
I did. We have an application before us, Mr. Chair, for M3. That's what the property is currently zoned. We don't normally ask people to down designate their zoning. I understand that they are applying for uses that could be M2. However, I understand that Mr. Rose comments about going back to his client because he cannot make that decision. And certainly that wasn't the application. So I don't see how, as a planning committee, we can come forward and say, oh, we don't like what it's zoned now, so we want you to change it to M2, just because of the uses that the developer is asking for. I don't agree with that. And those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Gower. And we'll go to Councilor House next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to start with a point of clarification for Councillor Gatward, not all of this land is currently zoned M3. That's part of why we're here. I do understand that a big part of it is M3, and part of me is concerned that if we choose to not approve this application, months from now, we might see an application for all three of these properties that are even less palatable than an industrial building, quilting shop, and cold storage. So I just wanted to make that clarification. I'm like Pierce and LaFerrier, that I'm struggling a little bit with the M2, M3, but if as I believe was clarified before, if M3 is actually giving us more distance, even with the requested adjustment, more distance from the neighboring residences, then I can see the merit in the M3 side of it. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Go to Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be prepared to move a tabling motion for one cycle to allow staff of the applicant to investigate the merits of M2 versus M3 zoning.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the tabling motion? Because I will entertain it at this moment. Mayor Bailey. Does anybody wish to speak to the tabling motion? sorry, Bob, I can't go to you right now because we are in deliberations. Councillor Wheat.
Be careful what you wish for.
You have said that before and you were spot on. Just so you know.
Just
Councillor
be
Chambers.
careful what you wish for.
Councillor Chambers.
Yes, I'll be careful what I wish for, but I wish that staff and the applicant can sit down and, as suggested by our Director of Planning and agreed to by the applicant, that there may be advantages and disadvantages to M2 versus M3, and it doesn't change the status of the application at this point. But if the information comes back that indeed M2 is preferable to M3 or vice versa, then the committee would be in a better position to act on the recommendation for approval. If not, you're either going to approve or disapprove, and I think it only makes sense to allow staff and the applicant to investigate further and bring it back. I think that's what the planning director intimated in his comments.
I'll let you answer that, Matt, and then we'll go to Councillor Bell. And I apologize because he did have his hand up before the table of motion. So, John, just sit tight. Matt, can you, were you intimating that in your comments?
Yeah, through the chair to all of council. That's where I was going with that, is let us take a round or two. And the reason I say a round or two is just because Planning Act notices, we'll have to review this. I'm guessing we may need to recirculate this one just to meet all of our legislative requirements, but give us an opportunity to sit down with the applicant. I think it's a good application, but we've heard some concerns from council, and they're legitimate concerns about the future of this site. Not this developer, but future developers. We want to make sure we get it right. And so if council would like us to take a cycle or two to get back to you with a proper recommendation and give us some time to look into this, that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Councillor Bell, sorry. Say what you're going to say before. I apologize for on that motion before you were going to speak. Go ahead.
I think, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what I was going to say has been superseded by other comments, so nothing to add.
Okay. Do I see any more speakers to the tabling motion? Okay, see, now I will support, and it's not just the M2, the M3. I think there's a couple other things they could be looking at. Obviously, the exit, the entranceway, could also be looked at, I guess, in this tabling motion. So, yeah, I think there's a few things that could be looked at. So, if I don't see any other hands up, I'm going to call the question on to table this. I don't think we put a timeline on. I don't think we have to. I think staff will bring it back as soon as they can. So we'll trust in their good hands. So all in favor of the tabling motion? Opposed? Okay, Councillor, two opposed. Okay, appreciate that. It is carried. So we will move on. Mr. Phillips, I apologize, but again, we're in deliberations at that point. So we're going to move on.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. To 9.2, this is report 21-215 ZBA 24/21/ S. LaBelle. And this is Shannon. So Shannon, you want to go ahead? Your screen's up, so anytime you're ready.
Mr. Chair. Good evening, Council and members of the public. This is a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 214 Branch Church Road from MHN Lawyers, LLP, on behalf of owners Michael and Catherine Strick within the former township of Brantford, and was required as a condition of the surplus farm dwelling severance application B32-21-SL. The subject lands are located on the east side of Brant Church Road and north of the Brant Church Road and Indian Line Road intersection. The surrounding lands mainly consist of farm fields and associated agricultural structures. The subject lands have an area of approximately 29.4 hectares and a frontage of approximately 351 meters. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from agriculture and natural heritage to agriculture with site-specific provision A-177 and natural heritage in order to prohibit a dwelling and to recognize the undersized farm parcel of 29.4 hectares, whereas 40 hectares is required. The proposed rezoning application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The subject lands are designated agriculture and natural heritage in the County of Brant official plan, and in my opinion are in conformity with the official plan, as the retained lands will continue to be farmed as part of a larger farming operation. The subject lands are currently zoned as agriculture and natural heritage in the County of Brant zoning bylaw 6116. Only the portion zoned as agriculture will be rezoned to agriculture site-specific provision A-177 to prohibit a dwelling and to recognize the undersized farm parcel. On the portion of land zoned as natural heritage, the natural heritage zoning does not permit a dwelling. Therefore, the applicant would not be permitted to build a dwelling on the portion zoned as natural heritage either. The retained lands are maintaining the intent of the development standards for land zoned as agriculture, and in my opinion, thereby meeting the intent of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. At the time of writing the recommendation report, no public comments had been received. In my opinion, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the provincial policy statement, in conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conforms to the County of Brant official plan, and meets the intent of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. I am therefore recommending approval of the rezoning application. I would like to note that no additional fee was collected as a result of the deficient retained lot size. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. I'll get you to stop sharing your screen. Okay, awesome. Do we have any questions for the planner at this time? I see Councillor Gatward, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I support this application, but I'm just asking that staff double check whether this was the former geographic township of Brantford or geographic township of Oakland. Thank you. And if it is, it can be corrected in the paperwork. Thank you.
Okay, can we look at that, Shannon, then, and have it, if it has to be corrected for council later this month? Okay, thank
Through you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I was just gonna, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gatward. Yeah, I can certainly double check that and make any revisions if necessary.
Yeah. We have time. Okay, any other questions for our planner? Seeing none, is the agent or the applicant here this evening to speak to this?
Maria Kinkle here as agent.
Okay, Maria, go ahead.
I don't have any further comments to the, I'm here just in the event there's questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have a question for Maria? Seeing none from the committee, I will go to the, I'm going to open up this part of the meeting to the public then. And I'll ask our clerk, Adam, if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application here tonight.
Hi, Mr. Chair. No, there's no one registered to speak to this application.
Okay, I will ask a second time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. And I'll ask a third time if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Seeing none, I will declare this part of the meeting closed to the public. I'll bring it back to the committee and I'll ask the committee if there's somebody that'd like to move the recommendation. It'll be moved by Councillor Pierce, second by Councillor Wheat. Any comments, questions, discussions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Shannon, was this your first application, I believe, presenting?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it was.
Okay, I'll just say you did a good job. You got a little ways to go to catch up to David Rowe, but I thought you did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes care of that one. And we'll go to 9.3, and that is RPT 21-216 ZBA 26/21. And this is for 249 Garden Ave. And this is again Kayla. So Kayla, yep, your screen's up. So go ahead anytime you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application for lands located at 249 Garden Ave. The application is a temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, and it's submitted on behalf of Live Communities. The sales trailer is currently located on the east side of Garden Ave, County Road 18 in the County of Brant. And the sales trailer advertises Live Communities Development, which is on a separate parcel of land located at the west side of the County Road 18 within the city of Brantford. The rezoned portion has an approximate area of 4,700 square meters to accommodate the sales trailer. So back in 2017, there was a previous temporary use amendment to allow for the sales trailer approved by council. And so this evening, the application is just proposing to extend that existing trailer use on the subject lands for the period of 1 year. And as per the Planning Act, this is a temporary use allowance through the Planning Act. And given the circumstances of the pandemic and restrictions on appointment-only based home sales, it's anticipated that they would be needing to use this sales trailer slightly longer for the period of another year. Planning staff have reviewed the appropriate policy, the Planning Act, provincial policy statement, the growth plan, official plan and zoning, and planning staff do support the application and recommend that it be approved for the period of 1 year. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kayla. Are there any questions for Kayla at this time? Okay, seeing none, I have one question. Kayla, where did the 1 year come from? Is that enough time?
Through the chair, yes. So it was the period of 1 year came through discussions with the applicant and the agent, and it was anticipated that the 1 year was all that they would need to sort of wrap up the sales at that location.
Okay. I don't want to see it come back next year and ask for another year. That's why I'm asking. So, okay, thank you very much. Is the applicant or an agent of the applicant here tonight to discuss this one? Do we know?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. I'll ask if there's anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this application. Adam, anybody?
Hi,
Hiding
Mr. Chair.
anybody in
No,
your room there?
I don't have anyone registered, and I don't see anyone aside from our staff and members of committee left. So,
all right. I will ask a second time if there's anybody from the public that would like to speak to this application, and I'll ask a third time if there's anyone that would like to speak to this application. Seeing none, I'll close this part of the meeting off to the public, and I'll bring back into the committee and ask the committee how they'd like to deal with it. Moved by Councillor Gatward, seconded by, I need another hand up, John McAlpine. Any further comments or questions or discussion on this one? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All in favor to approve? All opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much. This brings us to 9.4, which has been deferred. We don't know when. There's no consent items, no staff report, no communications, no other business. At this point in the meeting, unless I see a hand raised, I will call this meeting adjourned, and I thank everybody for their indulgence this evening. Good night, all.
Thanks all. Good discussions.